Hello again, everyone. My name is Ryan Guest, Elections Data Fellow here at Decision Desk HQ. We're coming up on another round of poll closings at 7:30 p.m. on the East Coast, and I'm here to take you through which races to watch, as well as which metrics our race call team will be factoring in to our projections as the night goes on. The polls will close at 7:30 p.m. on the East Coast in 3 Appalachian states, North Carolina, Ohio, and West Virginia. The 2 most high-profile races are the Senate contests in North Carolina and Ohio. Republican Senator Richard Burr is retiring in North Carolina, leaving the GOP to defend an open seat, and Republican nominee U.S. Congressman Ted Budd faces former Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court, Democratic nominee Cheri Beasley. Decision Desk HQ currently rates the battle as lean Republican, although Beasley, much like Val Demings in Florida, has exceeded expectations in polling at times, and currently trails Budd by less than 3% in our polling average. Do keep in mind, however, that 2020 Democratic Senate candidate Cal Cunningham led by over 3 points in our polling average before losing by over 1.5 points. Keep in mind that Beasley is likely to jump out to an early lead based off of the Democratic-leaning absentee and early vote ballots that'll arrive first out of the urban areas in the state, while then later on, as the Election Day vote trickles in out of the more GOP-dominant rurals, Budd will start to narrow that gap. Meanwhile, Ohio is not a state that has been especially competitive the last few cycles, but this is yet another open seat that the GOP has to defend as Republican incumbent Senator Rob Portman is retiring. J.D. Vance, the Republican nominee, has significantly underperformed in both polling and fundraising. Meanwhile, U.S. Congressman Tim Ryan was probably the only candidate the Democrats could field that would make this race interesting, given his working-class, protectionist Rust Belt appeal, though he still faces an uphill climb, given that Ohio voted for Trump by 8% 2 years ago and is considered to be trending toward the right. DDHQ rates the contest as lean Republican. Something to watch for is the margin in this race, as it could be an early preview of 2 other key Senate races later tonight, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. There are 3 U.S. House races worth keeping an eye on at this hour as well. Longtime Democratic incumbent G.K. Butterfield is retiring in North Carolina's 1st Congressional District. In the 2022 contest between Sandy Smith and State Senator Don Davis has gone back and forth between lean Democrat and toss-up. Smith swung this district 20 points to the right as the Republican nominee in 2020, and continuing population decline in the district's majority black counties will be key to her chances here. This is the sort of district that Republicans should win in a really favorable environment for the Republican Party nationwide. On the other side of things, Ohio's Republican-held 1st Congressional District is rated a toss-up. Incumbent Congressman Steve Chabot is not as moderate a candidate as the GOP would probably like to have in a district that broke hard against Trump in 2020 and was redistricted several points more Democratic. It voted for Trump by 3% in 2020 and would have voted for Biden by 9 points under the new lines. To make matters worse for the incumbent, this district is high education attainment, a demographic that could turn out in droves for Democrats after the Supreme Court's abortion ruling earlier this year. If Democrat Greg Landsman pulls this one off, it could be an early sign that enough ancestral Republican well-educated voters are backing Democratic candidates in light of the Dobbs decision and potentially save the Democrats from major losses tonight. Finally, Ohio's 9th Congressional District poses an example of a Democratic-held seat that should flip if Republicans really are to gain 20 to 30 seats in the House tonight. The race has hovered around lean Republican and toss-up in DDHQ's forecast, as 30-year incumbent Democratic Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur is running for re-election in her gerrymandered Toledo-based district that voted for Biden by nearly 20 points in 2020, but got redistricted to favor Trump by 3%. The good news, though, for Democrats here is that J.R. Majewski has been embroiled in controversies, and Kaptur is an overperformer. And with that, back to our team of experts in the studio.
I'm going to quickly introduce my friends and participants in this lovely conversation. Ryan Matsumoto, Jacob Rubashkin, Bradley Washer, Aaron Covey, Leah Askarinam, and welcome. Thank you for your patience. And we're just diving right in. We're getting close to the 7:30 poll closing time. And I don't believe we have a single House race called yet from the competitive, from the list of competitive races or from the competitive list of Senate races. But that's okay. This is how election night normally goes, and it's a hurry up and wait situation. But I know Jacob and Aaron, you were talking about a race in Florida that you were watching, the 13th district, right? Can you talk about what you all were looking at?
Yeah, this one's interesting because this is like a Trump +7 district, I believe. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. But so this should not really be on the board for Democrats this cycle, but it may be the closest House race in Florida, just because the Democratic candidate there has this massive super PAC that's spending a ton of money for him, and Anna Paulina Luna, the Republican nominee, also went through a really bruising primary and like faced a lot of attack ads. So this could be one of the closer races to watch in Florida, which is not something I don't think anyone expected.
Yeah, this is, well, I would say we expected it.
Yeah, that's
we
true.
Moved
We
this
did
race,
expect it.
we moved this race toward Democrats from likely Republican to lean Republican. You know, Eric Lynn, former Defense Department official, briefly ran for this seat in 2016, got out of the race when Charlie Crist took over as Democratic nominee. And, you know, so he's got a little bit of political experience. He's got that $10 million super PAC funded by a single donor, private equity guy out of Chicago. And this is a district that was redrawn to be more favorable to Republicans, but in close statewide races in Florida at least, can vote for Democrats. And obviously outgoing Congressman Charlie Crist, the gubernatorial nominee, held this seat for the past 6 years. So we'll see how Lynn does. These earlier votes should be more favorable to Democrats, but you know, certainly compared to how Democratic candidates are doing in a lot of the other even mildly competitive races, this could be one to watch.
And do we have anything yet from the competitive statewide, where we have a little bit from Florida, we have some from Georgia? Is there any, what is
Yeah, so we have some initial Senate results from some of these races. I think the big thing with Florida was that they dropped the early vote, which is a pretty substantial part of the Florida vote. And in particular, Miami-Dade County, it looks like Rubio is winning that by 7 points in the early vote. And it's expected that they'll get even more Republican once we add in the election day votes. So that's a great sign for him and for Florida Republicans, because that's still a county that Biden won in 2020 by about 7 points. Very large Latino population. So looks like Florida is going pretty Republican as expected from the pre-election polls.
and
Just a note, it seems like from the chat we have some issues with audio right now, so speak up, talk as loud as you want, no murmuring, even we all want to hear what you want to say. And for the folks at home, we are working on these audio issues, just so you know. Until then, we'll just talk way too loud, and when my voice gets annoying, let me know.
No, and this is a part of the spontaneity of of the conversation. Now, there was some stuff online earlier about South Florida going even more Republican maybe than expected, and some districts such as Lois Frankel or other seats going Democratic or going Republican that we didn't expect. Is there any? Do we think there's any credence to that?
Look, I think if the bottom is really going to fall out for Democrats in Florida, who knows? You know, I think the first seat to look for there would probably be the open 23rd district, which is where Ted Deutsch is not seeking re-election, and Jared Moskowitz is the Democratic nominee there. He's supposed to win, but how close that is might be something to watch to determine just how much Florida Democrats have really dropped the ball this election cycle after so many years of being so highly competitive statewide and even in a number of other congressional districts.
And those would probably qualify as a surprise. Everyone always asks us ahead of time, what are the surprises? In a case like that, it's probably where an assumptions are made both on the offense and defensive side that someone's going to win, and so they don't poll or they're not engaged in a race. And so when we're doing our analysis, there's not data to be found, and so that's how the recipe for a surprise.
I will say I think that there has been some attention being paid to the Moskowitz. I think that the Democrats kind of who have been on the more bearish side for the party in Florida have been keeping tabs on that district at least, perhaps not actively engaging in it, but again, if the bottom is going to fall out, it will be there first, and then potentially in some of these other districts in South Florida. But it doesn't look like at the moment we're seeing that. I mean, Moscovitz still has about a 19-point lead. Obviously, that's in
With how much in?
with about 40% in, which should be more favorable to Democrats given that it's early vote. But if we take a look at the the redrawn district, this was a Biden plus 14. So at the moment, being up 19, we expect that to come down, but still not necessarily in a kind of danger zone in a way that, Florida 27, which was a Biden 1 district in 2020, is already clearly in the Republican column. Maria Elvira Salazar 56, Annette Tadeo 44, with about 60% reporting.
Yeah, so what races are close, do we think are closest to being called? DDHQ is making the calls, but what are there ones that we think are getting close to, we might see a winner sooner rather than later?
I definitely think with the Florida races, based on how things are going, once the central time zone counties close their polls at 8 p.m., then we might get some relatively early calls for Rubio and DeSantis, because based on the early vote returns, they seem to be doing really well, and it doesn't look like there's going to be a surprise there for Democrats.
And to catch everyone up, Rand Paul, if you were waiting on whether Rand Paul was going to win re-election or not in Kentucky, that race was called. So you can mark that off your list. And I believe, I'm looking at I don't know if DDHQ is called the Todd Young race in Indiana, but that's probably close to Tim Scott in South Carolina. He can now officially begin his presidential run, and now that he has re-election out of the way.
How much money does Tim Scott have in his bank account right now? Let's check.
I thought it was in the neighborhood of 17, but that might be
No. As of
low.
October 19th, Tim Scott has $21 million ready to deploy for whatever his next federal election is.
Do you think he'll announce next week?
On
Well,
the 15th.
yeah.
On the 15th.
Wouldn't be alone.
That's also the same day Mike Pence is coming out with his new book.
I mean, a lot of people waiting for that.
So just another thing I've been watching with some of these early results out of Georgia is comparing the current results in the Senate race with the governor race, because the Republican Brian Kemp has been polling about 7 points better than Mr. Walker in the Senate race, and I think that's something to watch, and that if that amount of ticket splitting between the Senate and the governor race is really small, then that looks really bad for the Democrats' chances there. But if it's larger, then Warnock may be able to pull it off, even if Kemp wins by a decent margin.
And what's the current on the third-party candidate? What's their current percentage?
So in the Senate race, the Libertarian candidate has 1.4%.
So that makes it easier for one of them to avoid a runoff if they're only getting 1.5 versus
Right, yeah, then
5
I guess they
or
would have to
something.
win by 1.5, and the top line margin to hit 50.
Because I think in talking with folks before Election Day, if Oliver was at 5 or so, that would certainly increase the likelihood of a runoff.
Right.
But if he's at 3 or 2 or even less, then
Yeah, I heard that the Libertarian was a bit more of a weaker candidate than usual for Libertarian standards this year.
where is the bar for our Libertarian candidate? But now we just trash all Libertarians on their live stream.
Just this guy.
It's okay. I hear the audio's a little off right now, so
okay.
nobody can hear it anyway.
Yeah.
Oh.
We're still working on it, everyone. Just
Can
letting
they
you know.
hear us at all?
Yes, they can hear us,
Oh, okay.
but apparently the volume's up very high. So when they fix the audio, we better give an announcement so that we don't blast these people out of their chairs. Wake up, everyone! It's election night in America.
Ryan, you've definitely been projecting more, so I think every time you talk, it's like a lot louder.
Oh,
No, that's
okay.
good.
Which
You're
is
doing,
good, yeah.
that's
Cool.
good.
The rest of
For
us
now.
have not. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for your grace and your forgiveness. We are working on it. I'm trying to look here. What other? Ohio. Do we have anything out of Ohio yet?
I think they called it for Oh, House. Sorry.
well,
I think they called it for DeWine.
Oh, DeWine's called, okay.
They called DeWine already.
Did they? Well, I don't know. I'm checking. But
Someone
somebody,
called it, yeah.
someone called DeWine. I don't know who called it.
Just like a random guy on Twitter.
Just some really invested election Twitter person called it. No, let me pull it up.
Wasserman is off, and everyone thinks they have like a room.
Everybody's Wasserman
Behind
today.
the scenes at NBC News.
Okay, they can hear us.
Yay! Well, welcome everyone to the audio portion of our live stream event. So a number of House races, of the non-competitive Ohio races, have been called: Wenstrup, Beatty, Jordan, Latta, Johnson, Davidson, Brown, and Balderson. But we're really still waiting on the three key ones: First District Shabbat, 13th District, the open seat, and the 9th District with Marcy Kaptur. To me, the Kaptur-Majewski race, since Republicans totally abandoned Majewski, if that race ends up being close, or of course if Majewski wins, then that's a sign that things are strictly partisan, or sending a message that it doesn't matter if someone has considerable liabilities as a candidate. But I don't think we have anything yet there.
For folks who maybe could not hear us before and can now hear us, we're here, audio is good. Can we do a bit of a refresher on some of the questions in Florida? It sounded like one race that was leaning toward Republicans was closer than expected, but looks like the numbers out of Miami-Dade are really good early for Republicans. So how are we reading into that?
Yeah, the early conversation was talking about the 13th district, which is Charlie Crist open seat, and Democrats having an opportunity to kind of go against the tide. What's the update on how much is in Florida 13?
In Florida 13,
Pull in that.
which is
Okay, it looks like Luna has the lead now by like 6 points with 92% in.
92%. So, and that's 92% of the estimated.
Yeah,
well,
92%
that's
of
what we
the
did.
estimated. So
And Luna, the Republican,
Yeah.
is up 6 points.
she's up, yeah, which I think is what we would have expected.
I mean, that's
But
roughly
again,
in
yeah.
line with where Trump was
Right.
in the district, which, frankly, I mean, given how Republicans are doing in Florida elsewhere, I would call a little bit of an underperformance, obviously more than enough to get her to Congress. This is one of those races that, in better years for Democrats, is going to be highly competitive, to the extent that Florida has highly competitive races. But this year, it probably is out of reach. It looks like she's up by 6 now, yeah.
And what about Miami-Dade? Anything in the Lois Frankel or
Or the Senate race.
the surprise, or the margin in the Senate race?
Looks like, oh, it just refreshed. DeSantis has 54% in Miami-Dade right now.
What was his? Do we know what was? I don't remember his total. What was his Miami-Dade 4 years ago?
He didn't win it 4 years ago, I believe.
Yeah, that would be
This would be unprecedented.
Right, even in 2020
Republican.
presidential, when
Yeah.
Republicans made big gains in Latinos, Biden still won that county by 7. So it's a solid 13 to 15 point swing to the right from just 2 years ago.
I think it shifted 23 from 16 to 20. Like,
Yeah.
even though
Right, yeah.
Biden still won, it was a huge shift.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's one of the reasons that the House races are so hard to figure out. Because you look at the 2016 number, you think you know what it votes as. You look at the 2020 number, it's completely different. So it's just difficult finding that middle point.
So how are you reading into the evening so far? Based on, the thing with Florida is I feel like everyone always Republicans always do well in Florida, and that's not always a baseline for the entire night. Based on what we're seeing so far, is it an amazing night for Republicans? And I want to focus also on like the early vote that came in, right? Because we're still counting, so I don't want to use partials, but looking at the early vote specifically, it seems like this might be, I don't know, maybe the start of some good news for Republicans. But then I'm looking at this House district that sounds like in a wave would be more than a 6-point margin.
Yeah, I definitely think Florida looks great for Republicans right now based on what we're seeing from the early vote. And the election day vote maybe even more Republican than that. But yeah, I think we definitely wouldn't want to extrapolate out to the rest of the country just yet. Because I guess if we did that in 2020, then we would have expected Trump to win in a landslide. And yeah, in a lot of these races, it's like very early. Looking across the board at all these different states and different counties, we're not really seeing any counties that are like 100% reporting yet. So we definitely still have to wait to see what's going to happen.
Okay. So we're at that point in the night where we want to read into things, but we shouldn't.
We should be very careful, yeah.
All right. That's actually a good reminder.
Right.
Just let's wait for some Ohio results to start trickling in. And
The one thing I'll say about Ohio is we definitely want to be careful looking at those early Ohio results as well. In that I remember back in the presidential race a few years ago, the Democrats started ahead. But that was only because it was like the mail and or early vote that was reporting. But then once you add in those election day votes that are heavily Republican, then you saw all these counties flip and the margin go way to the right. So yeah,
so
just gotta be careful everywhere.
Yeah, we just need to wait for Virginia, then we can start. But even then, I guess early vote is that was something we all were warned to do, all warned everyone to do in 2020, to take the early vote with a grain of salt. And a lot of folks didn't do that. So let's be better this year.
Be better, be best.
Be better. Ooh, flashback. Yikes.
What do we think so do we have anything, I guess Indiana's first district, even though Indiana, because it's up there in the corner, we don't have anything yet from the first? Where is that? That's, the lone.
That one's in Central Time, so that's a little bit of a delay
Yeah, we
compared
have
to like
no
Jim
votes
Bates.
there. No votes
But
there.
that's definitely one to watch.
And Todd Young, I'm looking at the Senate race, Todd Young, was it a Democratic poll that had?
It was well. So Young had a poll that he did. Not Young. McDermott had a poll he did himself that had it like a high single-digit race, and then there was a poll from Indy Politics, I want to say, one of these local political tip sheets that also had a fairly close race. But beyond that, there never was really all that much of a suggestion that this was one to watch. I mean, we all remember in 2016 when Evan Bayh came out of the blue to be the Democratic nominee there, and everyone thought he was going to win, and he ended up losing by 10 points to Young. So this is not a state that feels comfortable for Democrats these days. Though, let's see how the Secretary of State, even the Secretary of State candidate, is performing not great. She's down 20 points, 57-37, which is better than Tom McDermott, but I don't know if that's enough to win.
In McDermott's home area, he's from the first.
He is from the first. That's
the
true.
first, where we're waiting for. There's been kind of an evolution, I feel like, on the first district with Congressman Mervan and Jennifer Ruth Green. How it was one of the early hot races to watch because of the progression in the presidential race toward Republicans, and then it kind of died off. The buzz about it died off, but then it caught on again at the end, and I think it's one of the bellwethers for tonight. On Indiana, since we're waiting on 2022 results, 2024, it looks like Senator Mike Braun is going to run for governor, so that could open up a primary, at least a competitive primary on the Republican side for the Senate next year. Since we have 2022 all figured out, why don't we just immediately start
Pack it
talking
up.
about 2024?
Yeah, let's start the 2024 presidential race already.
Even
There's some.
that's after I drink more Mountain Dew. We'll need to do that.
Well, look, I mean, Victoria Spartz, the freshman congresswoman from the Indianapolis suburbs, has already been talking about running for Senate if Braun chooses to run for governor. So the jockeying has already begun, certainly.
Isn't Trey Hollingsworth also considering it? I think I saw something about him too.
Interesting, because he's out of here, right?
Yeah, he just retired.
He's
from
just
the House.
retired, so
Now it's Aaron Houchin.
retired.
That's why I say not running for reelection.
Not running for reelection.
Retire. Those are
Not
two different.
currently in the process of running for reelection. Not today.
At the moment.
Those are
Yeah.
two different things.
He's not announcing plans at the moment.
All right. Do we have anything in Ohio? What does those Ohio House races look like? Or the North Carolina?
Let's see.
So what should we be looking into in Ohio? I think might be what are there hasn't been throughout the last decade because of gerrymandering in Ohio, we just didn't really see any movement after 2012. So what are we looking at to get a sense of where the momentum is going tonight?
I think if it's going to be, right, you've got kind of three competitive districts in Ohio, right? You've got the 1st district, Steve Shabbat, redrawn to be favorable to Democrats. You've got the 13th district, which is technically Tim Ryan's old seat, but it no longer includes Youngstown and is now includes all of Akron, which did not used to be the case. And that's a highly competitive race. And then you've got the 9th district, which is Toledo, Marcy Kaptur, redrawn from a solidly Democratic district to one that Trump would have won by 3 points, but would have voted for some Democrats down ballots. Sherrod Brown would have won it by 17 points, for instance, in the 2018 Senate race. I think if Democrats are losing the 9th, if Marcy Kaptur is losing to J.R. Majewski, given everything we know about Majewski, that does not portend well for Democrats at all. That's a race that even in a not great year, but not a disaster year, they should be winning given the circumstances. On the flip side, if Democrats are winning the 13th, if Democrats are winning the 1st, certainly, they could actually be headed for not a terrible night in Ohio, all things considered, and might, I think that would net them a seat out of the state overall if they won the 13th, the 9th, and the 1st.
Let's look at North Carolina both at the Senate and House level, because we have a decent amount of
Cool.
at statewide, 39% of the estimated vote in. What can we tell from either Senate race or the House races?
Well, also in North Carolina, the 13th district is one to watch. And I don't think we only have 40% reported there at this point, so not too much to draw from that. But this is one, Trump won this by a couple of points in 2020. This should be a pretty easy Republican pickup. This is going to be a red wave situation, but we've kept this in toss-up, and most polls that we've seen have shown it pretty close. So this could be potential for a Democratic surprise. But I think at this point, just looking at the environment, Bo Hines, the Republican nominee there, should be favored to win.
We do have a race call, I see, from DDHQ in Florida's 27th district.
Oh.
I'm excited because it's a race that's actually on our list of competitive races. The race has been, Florida's 27th district called for Republican Congresswoman Maria Salazar. So we're, 83 races on our list, and that's the second one, because we also had Florida's 5th district, which was basically a redistricting flip that Republicans won, and now we have Salazar in the 27th, a South Florida district. Based on everything that we've seen, this is not a
Why was
not a
that?
surprise.
Florida 27 isn't likely Republican,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
Why? Because I remember last time Salazar was on this in 2020, it was a bit of a closer race.
Right. Well, that was arguably one of the surprise races, and so now.
It surprised me. So.
I mean, part of it was the trend that we're seeing in South Florida toward Republican candidates. The district isn't. Jacob or Aaron probably know the district even better than I do. But the strength of Congresswoman and Annette Taddeo, the Democratic candidate, she was running for governor, switched races late, and it's tough to make up ground, I think, in this environment if you're a Democrat in a competitive district. So.
Was the district, and I'm sorry, I'm asking really specific questions about individual districts, so if you don't have the answer immediately, not a huge issue, but was that drawn to redrawn to favor Republicans, or is it just that Miami-Dade is tougher for Democrats naturally in 2022 than it was than we thought it was in 2020?
I think it's a combination of both.
Yeah, it almost doesn't matter. This is a district that would have swung 18 points toward Trump between 2020 and 2016.
Oh, okay.
So whether it this is just Miami-Dade really, and South Florida really just exists in its own place when it comes to what we saw in between 2016 and 2020. Nowhere else in the country did we see the kind of movement, even in the other places where we talk about it, South Texas and places like that, Southern California. We didn't see the kind of magnitude that we did in Miami-Dade. So if you were looking at this district in a vacuum, you might have one sense of how it is politically, but looking at it in the larger context, that's why Salazar, clear favorite here, even though she was such an underdog in the 2020 race.
And to bring in our discussion from earlier, I think that's one of the reasons Florida's not really a good bellwether state for the night, because in the statewide races, there are incumbents running, and then it's pretty easy for Republicans to win both the governor and the Senate. In the House races, that's a pretty gerrymandered state, so we just don't have the suburban swing districts that people look to as traditional bellwethers. But then on the county level, Miami-Dade, people want to look there for the Hispanic vote, but as Jacob just noted, it is an anomaly all of its own. So it's just really difficult to look on any level at Florida for signs for other states, and that's why I think Ohio and North Carolina and Virginia are better bets for the beginning of the night.
That's really interesting, because just from, in 2020, when Salazar's race was called, you had to rethink the entire map, right? Like we missed something, right? And so now this is just a different cycle, different districts, different expectations.
So we're getting close to 8 o'clock. We'll have another batch of states. But is there anything we can tell about the North Carolina Senate race?
Okay, so what I'd say about the North Carolina Senate race is that I can guarantee you Beasley's not going to win by 12 points, which is what it currently says for initial results. So I looked at the statewide Secretary of State site to see what these votes are, and it looks like basically like 99% of them are the absentee vote, which leans Democratic. Very little election day vote. So we should definitely wait there to see what that election day vote shows and look at some of those counties once they reach like 95% reporting before we gather any conclusions. And similar thing once Ohio comes in. In 2020, Ohio initially looked more Democratic because of that absentee vote, but then election day vote comes in and it swings way to the right.
Did Ohio change the way that they process like absentee ballots at all? Because some states did from 2020, and you also have to take that into account when like comparing.
I'm not sure what happened in Ohio this year.
Yeah, I'm checking too. That's a good question.
But yeah, a lot of times it can also be like somewhat idiosyncratic based on different counties. Maybe one of them decides to release like the mail ballots first and a change from previous years. So that's why when I'm looking at these things and I'm trying to extrapolate results, I really want to see if a county is like 90-95% plus of the expected vote reporting. And then we can look and see how that compares to previous years. But if it's like 50 or 70%, then it could easily just be like a phantom swing where we're just looking at an artifact of the way in which results are reported in the order.
All right, trying to figure out here, are we're getting close to 8 o'clock. And I think we'll have a setup here because we have a number of states.
We do have Miami-Dade numbers.
And it looks like we might have new Miami-Dade numbers.
Ooh. Do we?
At least the voices in my head are telling me.
I'm looking. I have tabs open. I'm searching for them.
Right, we've got a map.
How many
map
voices
coming
do you
up.
have in your head? Nathan?
It depends. Right now, not as many, but as the night goes on, there are more voices.
Yeah, same here.
All right, let's see.
Early results from Virginia
What?
10.
Tell us about Virginia 10.
56% estimated in. Wexton is currently ahead by 1 point. And this is like a seat that Biden won by 20 points in 2020. So if Republicans do win here, then we're definitely in red wave territory.
Well,
Yeah.
what's the county breakdown? Because I believe that the 2nd and the 7th are also showing massive leads for the Republican nominees at this point. But I think we're expecting Democrats to make up quite a bit of ground. I saw in Culpeper County, for instance, in the 7th district, Abigail Spamberger losing by about 16 points to Yesli Vega, but if you look at kind of where the presidentials were, she'd probably need to be winning by another 10 points to have a shot district-wide. So Virginia looks like it's reporting Republican votes a little quicker. Both Kiggins and Vegas are showing big leads at the moment, I think.
Okay.
Anything from what the second district? Anything specific? You talked about the 10th district. Are there even any partials out of?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kiggins and Vega are both leading by significant margins in the vote that has been reported, but we expect that to come down. Yeah, we can see up there Vega up by 19 and the 38% that's been reported, but she's not going to win by 19. So
I don't know.
Yeah, don't say anything too confidently. We're on the record here.
The only poll that matters is the one on election day.
Exactly.
Remember that.
Which I thought Warnock was doing better until Senator Warnock said that today, and it's definitely one of the things losing candidates say.
Warnock said it today?
Yeah.
Oh.
Grace Seegers tweeted it out. So.
Wow. Okay.
All right.
All right. Decision.
Are we gonna? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I just am seeing a tweet that the decision desk called it for Katie Britt, which is
There we
not
go.
exciting in the general election. But if you had told me this time last year that we would not be talking about this race and that Katie Britt was a shoo-in on election day, I guess I would have believed you, but it would have taken me a little bit of math to get there after the primary.
And I don't know if we've got DDHQ calls, but several of the networks have called for both Rubio and DeSantis in Florida.
All right.
It looks like DDHQ just called DeSantis and Britt, yeah, as well.
Sorry, say that again, Aaron.
DDHQ called DeSantis,
For DeSantis.
yeah,
Okay.
but not for Rubio yet.
Not for Rubio yet.
Yeah. CBS and ABC have both called for both.
AP called the Illinois Gov race too,
For.
for Pritzker.
Okay, I was gonna say.
So it's not a complete.
Go on.
total-
Yeah.
Continue.
So it's not a complete total. Bottom has fallen out for
Yeah,
Democrats.
but I do think Pritzker was definitely doing a lot better than a lot of other Democratic governors in blue states, relative to where like Hochul and
So,
Even
and it'll be
maybe
interesting with
somewhere
those, because there were some outskirts, some house races on the outskirts of competitiveness. The Lauren Underwood, Sean Casten. Do we
Yeah.
have anything in those? Because those were ones that we were watching as sleeper or surprise, sleeper races.
let's see. I have to open up the tabs for all the 8 o'clock.
While you're
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
that, it looks like there's an update. Nobody get excited here, but there is a
We
brief
wanna get
update.
excited.
On the edge of my seat.
And Ohio said it. It looks like, but it looks like only 11% is in. Tim Ryan is up right now, but I'm like, do I even repeat the results with only 11% in? It seems like maybe.
What would Stu say?
What would Stu Rothenberg, tell us what you think. No, it's okay. You don't have to. So that's just an update.
Right.
It is being counted. They are
So-
counting the votes in Ohio.
If we take a look at Virginia 7, because we've got a fully voted county here in Culpeper County, in Virginia 7. This is a county that voted for Trump in 2020 by 20 points, 59-39, and it currently has voted for Republican Yesli Vega in the House race by, where are we?
21?
21. So Vega's running basically even to Trump in Culpeper, which is one of the more Republican counties in the district. Trump, of course, lost this district by about 7 points. So not a great sign for her at the moment. There's still a bunch of vote out, and of course nothing reported in Prince William, which is where Vega is from, where she's a county supervisor. So there's plenty of time left in this race, but always interesting to look at fully reported counties, and at the moment she's not really hitting her mark in Culpeper.
And Culpeper was in Spanberger's current district, right? I believe that's a part of her current one. It's changed really significantly. It's like
Yes.
much further north, but she's probably better known there than some of the other new parts that were added.
Jacob, what do the vote totals look like? Like Culpeper this right now versus how it voted in 2020? Do you have any idea how many people are actually casting ballots?
I'm seeing 20,000 votes in Culpeper, and in 2020 there were, where are we? Like 27,000, 26,000, 27,000.
All right.
So
4/5 about just.
So I guess that's you said it was Trump plus 20 in Culpeper, right?
yeah.
So 1 point shift to the right, and I think this was a Biden plus 2 district.
No, quite much more than
6.7,
that.
I think.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it was redrawn.
But Youngkin won it by like 5 points, and so it swung.
So what was Youngkin
Pretty.
in Culpeper?
That's a good question.
Let's
I'm
see.
not sure.
Youngkin in Culpeper.
So she's probably under. If she's barely underperforming Trump, she's probably underperforming.
Yeah,
She definitely would be.
Youngkin won Culpeper 67-33. So,
Wow. Yeah.
While we're still in Culpeper, I don't want to take us out, but
We
We're
don't
gonna
leave
stay in
Culpeper.
Culpeper all night.
It's a lovely
Hey.
county.
it's a good name. It looks like the AP called Maura Healey for governor of Massachusetts, and the Center for American Women in Politics, COP, at Rutgers, noted that she is the first woman to be elected governor of Massachusetts, even if she's not the first female governor of Massachusetts.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Nothing surprising there, but fun fact.
Technically a takeover.
Yeah,
It's
it didn't
really
flip.
a takeover.
It's a flip.
Gosh. Yeah, it is technically a
Is that our
takeover.
first flip of the night then?
Oh.
In terms of gov races, definitely.
Have we had any other flips?
I don't think we have.
I don't
Not
think
like relevant.
so.
Yeah, no.
Don't take this moment away from her.
This is
We
No,
do
we're not-
have a
no,
looks
that's
like.
shocking.
Oh no, we don't have anything.
Yeah. Let's see.
Oh,
Go.
the AP also called Westmore the Democrat for governor of Maryland.
There we go.
Maryland's first black governor. Again, another takeover.
There we go.
Larry Hogan,
Number 2, it's a
Charlie
trend.
Baker, 2 Republicans in blue states who one could not run for re-election, one chose not to run for re-election, right? And now Democrats have, I guess, candidates matter in
Yeah.
2022 if you are a Republican
Or-
who's not running again in a completely blue state.
And running a race. I mean, Cox was one of those Republicans that won the nomination and I think decided not to run. Here's the map of Massachusetts that we're looking at.
Oh, cool.
Also, not to put a too fine a point on it, but Westmore is only the 3rd black person in American history to be elected governor of a state,
Wow.
which is quite wild when you think about
Yeah,
it.
that is.
Deval Patrick, Doug Wilder, there were 2 black governors who served in Reconstruction but who weren't elected. They were appointed by state legislatures. So this is quite a historic occasion, and Westmore is someone to watch in Democratic circles moving forward. He's got a phenomenal bio that may or may not have been a little embellished by either him or Oprah or other folks who have promoted his book in the past, but even the things we know are true. Rhodes Scholar, decorated Army veteran, best-selling author, charity CEO. This is a guy who everyone should be watching, especially given the proximity to the national DC media market. Being governor of Maryland has got to help.
Literally close to the White House, physically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
While we're on the, well, not going to get into the East Coast, Midwest conversation here, but we have some early votes in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
It does look like it's really early, but as expected, it looks like Shapiro is overperforming Fetterman. I don't know if it's really by enough to make a difference this early on, but it's just something that we expected, and it looks like the numbers are bearing that out.
Where's the, and where is the vote? Is it early vote? Is it widespread, or is it in a
It's
specific?
early vote. It is, let me see what percent is in. It's like 3% is in. It's
Looks
really
like Allegheny County near Pittsburgh.
okay. Oh yeah. So
I'm guessing early. I'm guessing it's mail votes. Based on the
Well,
margin.
oh, interesting.
Isn't there something about? Is it only in Philly where mail votes are now not going to be counted for quite some time?
I think that's a Philly thing, I
Uh,
think, but there was an update about that this morning.
Because I know Pennsylvania is one of 9 states that legally can't even begin to process absentee votes until the day of the election, right? So that's why we saw that blue shift in 2020, and the Republican legislature didn't change anything since then. So Allegheny County is an incredibly Democratic county to begin with, and it's Fetterman's home. So he's got to put up real big numbers there the whole night in order to bring this one home.
That is a good bellwether state for the night.
Yes.
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
That's a good
Count
Count
one.
their votes quickly.
You might
so
even
you'll
say
know
that
if
it's
people lie.
it's the keystone to.
Oh dear. I'm supposed to make those jokes. One thing I'm interested throughout the night, if we could keep an eye on the estimated vote and how many places, if any, we reach more than 100%, because the estimated vote is what it's estimated. So I wonder if we're going to exceed that in any. But it's early in the night for.
Oh, and ABC at least has called Florida 13 for Anna Paulina Luna.
Okay.
I
Not
believe.
sure.
Think we might have had a call there. Hold on. I don't want to. Give me one moment. Let me
Saw
look at
your
decision
tweet
desk.
about the
Yeah,
tip
we got a
there.
call. We got a
Okay.
call.
It's a
DDHQ
Yeah.
call in Florida's 13th district. Anna Paulina Luna, 7-point lead over Democrat Eric Lynn, roughly in line with presidential partisanship of the district, given how well Florida Republicans are doing. Call it an underperformance if you want, but by Luna.
But Trump won the district by roughly.
Trump won the district by roughly the same amount that
Okay.
she's winning it by.
Okay.
So, we'll see.
Circled the wrong race. So we have 3 races, 3 out of 83 competitive races that have been called, and they've all gone as expected. So we have a few.
What are they?
Is it 13, 15, and 27?
Sorry, go
Florida?
ahead. What was
Florida 13, 15, and 27 for the House races?
the districts?
Yes. Is that right?
Florida 13, Florida 5, and Florida 27.
Oh.
Right. But Florida,
What's 4 to 5?
Florida 5, it was called early, but that's the Rutherford.
yeah, I mean,
It's kind of the Al Lawson.
Was that a
we've been calling
likely
it that.
because it's a flip? Like it would be solid, but we just put it as likely.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. But,
Okay.
But did they call 15? I think AP called 15 for Laurel Lee.
oh,
I don't know. I'll have
I
to
don't-
double
let's
check.
look.
I'm getting all confused
Yeah.
now.
yeah, you're right. Florida 15 has been called for Laura Lee. There's Luna on the official, the nice card there with Luna's name, if you're wondering what she, get a visual there.
What was?
You're right, so four out of
So
83.
four, okay.
Florida 15 for Laura Lee.
And 4 to 5. Okay, got it.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just getting them all. I just need to get the new numbers with the incumbents
Very
in my brain.
confusing.
I know. I'm just pulling up the ratings so I can.
So Rutherford was 4 previously, and now he's 5. Is that correct? He's now 5, I know.
I've blocked out old numbers. I've moved on.
Okay.
With,
Yeah, I'm, just no.
but this was a confusing.
4 to
I had
5 was like-
multiple. Trying to assign these numbers to these districts was
This one was
challenging.
by far,
And North Carolina was a challenge. I felt like
yeah,
too about what to do with the 13th.
the 13th district.
Didn't really belong to anyone. All right, so yeah, 4 out of 83 House races called.
Got some
Okay.
positive feedback on the Keystone joke.
There we go.
Okay,
So.
I'll take it.
From dads. What was the other?
From my boyfriend. On his way to fatherhood, apparently.
There you go.
News to me.
Okay, so the ones that have been called have been in the likely,
One lean Republican, which is Florida 13,
Yeah.
and 3 likely Republicans, Florida 5, Florida 15, and Florida 27.
5 is more like a safe. That was just in the likely column because it's a flip.
right, because one
Yeah.
an incumbent is redistricted. Nope.
Well, we just didn't, we put flips, solid flips, keep them on our chart so that they don't get lost, because if they're in solid, then they aren't noted on our charts anywhere, so we try to.
So this is just in redistricting cases, like when,
Yeah, or I guess if there was I'm trying to think of a past retirement that would have potentially gone, flipped it all the way. It's usually just in redistricting.
like if Charlie Baker retired
Well,
early.
yeah, we kept Massachusetts and Maryland in likely, which was one of the, because it's
Oh,
they
interesting.
were flips,
Okay.
but yet not really at risk of being a hold. All right, 8 o'clock, we're watching Michigan. New Hampshire, gosh, if New Hampshire can, actually New Hampshire, we have a call in the governor's race for Governor Chris Sununu. It's not a surprise.
So
Just imagine the landscape if Chris Sununu had run for the Senate. I mean, that would have been, we probably would be talking about more confidently about Republicans winning the Senate if he had run. But he chose not to.
yeah, the announcement Chris Sununu won would have been meant something very different in another world. My little brother just texted me asking if I'm too busy to chat. So I'm going to
Take a
send
phone.
him to
You need to step away.
our live stream.
You should ask him if he's watching or not.
Well, now I'm sending it to him. Clearly he wasn't. So hopefully he won't start watching until after this part is over.
We've got early vote in the Texas governor's race in several counties, and it looks like, just comparing early vote to early vote, comparing, maybe I shouldn't do this. This is a little more tenuous than I thought. This reporter from
Too
the
far, too
Houston
deep into it.
Chronicle is leading me astray here.
Oh, don't disrespect the Houston Chronicle.
No, they're good.
We don't do that.
Not in this house.
Not in this living room.
Beto O'Rourke up in the Dallas County early vote, trailing in Denton and Tarrant County early vote.
Now, Biden narrowly won Tarrant County, right? Because that was kind of
I
a
believe so.
surprise.
Yes.
In
And
2020.
now that I even say that, I don't know if this is early vote or early voting, or just votes that are early in the night. This is
So many-
an unclear.
So many options.
God, election night is so fun.
Even funner when your right leg is on fire because of this fire, but
Do you want to switch?
I'm
We can
fine for now,
rotate.
but I reserve the right to switch.
Do we have, it looks like we have just some new votes coming in from Virginia. You guys are probably will have more insightful observations than I do, but if you want to take a second and look at where Virginia 10, Virginia 7, and Virginia 2 are, it looks like Virginia 10, which is same number as it was in 2020, right? So
Yes.
Yeah.
still Jennifer Wexton. Looks like with 74% in, it's pretty much tied. But again, 74%. I don't know if that's how much we should be reading into that.
Is this on like the Virginia?
This is all, this is
This
all
is-
election day vote in Virginia as well as the other thing.
Comes from DDHQ.
It's everything.
Yeah.
I also
What?
have the New
It's a
York Times,
combination?
so-
No,
Oh, okay.
it's
Only
election,
election
it's
day.
election day
Tracking
vote
the same.
So that would be good.
for
Presumably for
Democrats.
Wexton.
Yeah.
All right. AP just called it for Rubio.
Okay.
Yeah, just looking to see if we have any other fully called counties in Virginia. It looks like Culpeper is still.
Southampton's close to it,
Southampton is close to it.
but that's not really going to tell us much. I
It's
think.
a split county though, so I
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
the portion of Southampton that's in Virginia too. I don't know off the top of my head how that went.
Let's ask Bradley how much he likes split precincts and split counties.
Virginia doesn't have as many as some other states. That's
What is the
thankful.
worst state in terms of splitting?
I'm sorry, in terms of what?
Split precincts and split counties.
I think it's less annoying when the state is a lot of split precincts and more annoying when a precinct is split across a lot of districts. Because there are some precincts that are split across 3 districts, and then I can't remember which state, but there's one with 4, I think.
Well, when you remember, let's definitely throw that precinct under the bus. Let's call them out. Call them out on YouTube.
All right.
Votes in New Jersey too.
There's actually, we have a question on YouTube while we're waiting. Seems like we're at that point where we're going to have a whole bunch of results all at once, and we're not there yet. Just would you say Democrats are performing quite well so far?
I don't think we know enough.
Yeah.
Not
I
right
mean,
at
again, we
the
have
moment.
4 races out of the 83 competitives, and they're going as expected. And if things go as expected, then Republicans are going to win the House by at least a dozen or more, with
Yep.
a dozen or more margin. So
So ask that question again in about an hour, and we'll get back to it. There's also a hot take on my Twitter feed that I wanted to run past.
does it have to do with this fire?
No,
Okay.
physically, I'm fine. Just can't take the heat. Get out of the living room.
Wow.
It is a take from Nate Cohn at the New York Times. He said you should basically ignore the early votes in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina, which will be extremely unrepresentative. Wait for completed votes.
Is he on a live stream right now?
I'm just he's on Twitter is the original live stream before, like, after MySpace.
We've got a bunch of vote in New Hampshire.
Let's talk about it.
Well, a bunch is
13%.
but we do have some, New Hampshire, every single house is its own county. So we do have some municipalities that are more or less most of the way through voting, or I guess towns is how they report it in New Hampshire. So if we take a look at Concord, Hassan leading by 38 points. If we look at the presidential,
Yeah, give us a reference point.
yeah, I'm just going to pull up Concord. Where are we? Concord was Biden by 32 points in 2020. Jean Shaheen by 41 points. So
Wait, and Hassan's at 33?
Hassan's at 38 in Concord right now,
Okay.
with about 80% of the vote in Rochester. Similar, she's leading by a little bit. Let's see where she was, or where the president was in 2020. So Rochester, very narrow in 2020 presidential, was a Trump plus 1.5, and Hassan is up by about a half a point with 86% in. So still early there, obviously, but bodes well for Hassan out of these municipalities that have completed counting.
And that would be early, if we know whether, if we get a race call tonight on New Hampshire, that doesn't tell us officially which party is going to be in control of the Senate, but that would tell us that the bottom hasn't fallen out completely for Democrats if Hassan's winning. And then if either of those House races flip, then that would be good news for Republicans, because Democrats are favored to win. We're favored to win them coming into tonight.
New Hampshire one's a lot closer, or it
Where
should
does that
be
stand right now?
a lot closer. I don't.
Oh,
let
you
me
mean
see.
it should be or is in the early?
New Hampshire one is a lot closer to a toss-up than New Hampshire two, which I would say is more likely Democratic. But I think if Pappas wins in New Hampshire one, that would be a good sign for Democrats. Doesn't mean they're going to hold the House, but it would be a good sign for them.
So I'm looking at some of these New Hampshire results in these little tiny towns that are like 95 to 100% reporting. So we have this town called Brookline, which Hassan's up by 9 points, and it looks like in 2020 that one was Biden plus 7, so that's good for Democrats. And then there's New Ipswich, which Baldock is winning by 40 points, and that was Trump plus 36, so like a 5-point swing. So I think based on that, it looks decent for Hassan so far, and that Biden won New Hampshire by 7 points. So on average, you need to swing every single town by 7 points, and it looks like it's less than that, or like maybe even similar to 2020. But lots of towns, so lots of things can happen.
It looks like I keep seeing that the first Gen Z member of Congress was
Caroline
elected.
No.
Maxwell
We'll
Frost.
see.
Oh, is that race called?
It looks
Yeah, that was a safe Democratic seat.
Yep. So Gen Z beginning its takeover.
The funny thing is that Madison Cawthorn said he considered himself Gen Z initially.
But he was older than me.
He is, yeah. I don't know if like by Pew Research, I don't know what metric we're using here, but
Pew starts Gen Z in 97.
yeah. So
Interesting.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Then Cawthorn would not be Gen Z. But he was claiming it initially because he told Kirk that.
Oh,
Kirk
at the
Q&A.
hotline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that.
It's open to interpretation for some folks, but it looks like this is officially the first Gen Z.
Yeah, because Frost is 25. He is our age, Jacob. So he's
Born
definitely Gen
January
Z.
97.
Yeah.
97.
Friend of the site, Nathaniel Rakich, likes to joke about a super PAC, an imaginary super PAC he has called FOMO PAC, which spends only against candidates who are younger than he is, because he doesn't want to have people younger than he is serving in Congress. So
I think I'm harder on candidates when we interview them, candidates who are younger than me. But yet there are more and more candidates that are younger than me as I continue to age. There was the candidate from New Jersey. I think he challenged Norcross in a primary a few cycles ago. And he came in with an entourage of students who were younger than he was. He was young, and the students were wearing shorts, which I had never experienced in my time of interviewing candidates where people come in. I'm trying to be casual, but shorts might have been not as appropriate.
here's another New Hampshire town for you, tiny Somersworth, New Hampshire. And did I steal your thunder, Bradley?
No. I was just proud of Somersworth for getting it through.
In Stratford County, New Hampshire, which I'll note is a CD1, is a Pappas town.
Okay.
We've got more than 95% of the vote in. Hassan up by 18. This was a this was a Biden plus 12. I was looking at the wrong one. Biden plus 14 town in 2020.
We've got early vote in Cameron County, which is in Texas 34. not to move things away from New Hampshire.
Incumbent, please, Texas 34.
Texas 34. So that's 2 incumbents.
Okay. Oh.
Myra Flores, who won the special election, and then Vicente Gonzalez, who was the 15th current rep. So he's running against her.
Got it. Okay, I know that one.
Yeah.
We're good.
So wait, so tell what is
Yeah, what do
happening
you
in
see?
Cameron County?
I'm looking at a tweet right now, so I need to, if someone wants to like pull it up on any of the other sites. According to Patrick from the Texas Tribune,
Trustworthy guy.
he's great. Gonzalez 50, Flores 47. I think that's percentage, I assume, but I don't know what the actual breakdown is in terms of how much of that has been reported.
And what are we expecting Cameron County to do?
So Cameron County, I believe
That's a
Texas
big
34 is,
Democratic county, right?
it is, but it's mostly Texas 34 is mostly Cameron County, I believe. I'd have to double check, but
I have a question from a friend on something else. We go to a different, just a general conversation piece. Is Florida still a swing state?
I call Florida a battleground state, but not a swing state. In order for it to be swing, you have to win more than one statewide race over 10 years, and Democrats haven't been able to do that. But I think it's still, despite the margins tonight, still the partisanship is close, but not a swing state.
I would say it definitely leans Republican now. Just looking at 2020 presidential, it was like 8 points more Republican than the nation. And then Republicans are winning both Senate and governor this year by double digits. 2018, which is the blue wave year, Republicans won Senate and governor then. So I'd say, like, looking at that, you have to say that it's definitely more to the right of the nation. And, like, I guess it could be close if there's, like, a pretty Democratic year. But generally speaking, I wouldn't say it would be like a decisive state for, I guess, like, national implications.
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, like, when does Florida go Democratic in another presidential election in the next, 10 years? And the thing is, it's always so close that it's almost seems silly to rule it out just because it's so close. Like, that's just, it's not, I don't know if it's just always the environment or if it's always the candidate. 2018, I guess, would be more candidate than an environment, but maybe not, because Florida, as we said earlier, is kind of its own political environment, separate from the rest of the country. It's just, it's a tough one.
Yeah, I would say that with Florida, for it to go back to, like, swing state or decisive state status, you would need to see the Democrats start to claw back some of those gains that Republicans have made with Latino voters in recent years. I think if Republicans continue to do well and get some of those, like, Trump 2020 like numbers or even better with Latino voters, then it'll definitely stay to the right of the nation.
Right. 'Cause, like, we would. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the ways that I answer if a state's a swing state is by looking at the inside elections baseline metric.
Oh, wait.
Tell us about
what
that,
is-
Brad.
Yeah.
What is that?
So the baseline metric takes an average of election results from the last 4 cycles. So we're looking at 2020, 2018, 2016, and 2014. But we don't just do an average, we do what's known as a trimmed average. So we drop the highest result and the lowest result and then take everything in the middle. And looking at Florida statewide baseline, in 2016, so races between 2016 and 2010, it was R+9. In 2018, it was R+5. And then in 2020, it's been R+6. So I think that speaks to what Nathan is saying, where it definitely is a battleground, but it's pretty consistently, as Ryan says, a Republican-leaning state.
Can I ask what Texas baseline is?
Yeah, so
You can
Texas,
ask, but
May I please?
so it
sir?
goes from 18.6 in 2014 to most recently being like 13.
Okay,
R plus
so it's still
13.
pretty
Yeah.
significantly bigger than Florida. All right.
So yeah, another, just touching on New Hampshire again, yeah, more of these towns are coming in with like 95 to 100% reporting. I think every single one, looks pretty good for Hassan. It seems like there's a whole bunch actually where she's outperforming Biden 2020 numbers. And then there's a few where she's maybe underperforming by like 3 or 4 points. But I think based on what we're looking at in New Hampshire with these towns, I think Hassan's pretty strongly favored there.
Just a few random results that I'm seeing from the AP that come in. Sarah Huckabee Sanders in Arkansas, not surprising. And I believe NBC called it for Phil Scott, Republican in Vermont, who's kind of the last man standing of the Charlie Baker, Larry Hogan, Phil Scott Republican trio. I don't think Kristen Nunu quite fits in there. It's a little bit too purple, New Hampshire. So Vermont has a Republican governor.
And probably a split ticket issue, split ticket with the Senate race then,
Yeah, I would.
or else there's a surprise.
I would put money on that.
I've seen calls for Vermont already in the Senate.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Said I think I've already seen Vermont Senate calls. I don't know if
Yeah,
we.
I saw them early, like
Yeah.
first thing,
See.
I think.
I think before we even started, yeah.
They're ahead of us.
Yeah. And when we're pulling up here, Vermont, when we're talking about races, and the map pulls up, we will we'll dwell on those a little bit more. What else? Is there any other competitive? I'm searching for any competitive House race that's been called in the last.
Yeah, I mean,
None of them have.
I'll just give another shout out to Florida. On ABC at least, we've got calls for and Decision Desk. We've got calls for Corey Mills in the 7th district, which is that redrawn Stephanie Murphy seat. We've got that Luna district, which is the redrawn Charlie Crist seat. Aaron Bean in the 4th district, which kind of was the redrawn, one of the pieces of the Al Lawson seat that was redrawn. Right off the bat, 3 Democrats who aren't coming back to Congress, most likely, because Lawson, the race he's running in hasn't been called yet, but he doesn't look in, or it has been called for Neil
the
Dunn.
2nd district.
So Republicans need 5 seats to win back the majority. They already have 3 in Florida. So, they might drop some elsewhere, but it just shows you with such a narrow majority, it doesn't take a red wave. It doesn't take any sort of massive wave election or sea change in the politics to get 5 seats. They're getting 3 out of Florida already. In order to show how hard the map is for Democrats overall, if Democrats win every race that we think that they are favored in, whether it's solid, likely, lean, or tilt, and then Democrats have to win 19 out of the 20 toss-ups in order to get there. So that is technically possible, but that's how unlikely it is because of that. Those percentages are not working in their favor.
Where are Jacob's heard me ask this question before. When we say that Republicans only need to pick up 5 seats, is that take into account like Florida? What was the one that
5?
4 to 5, right? Like that's basically it's over before it started because of redistricting. It was a flip it flipped because of redistricting. Like, do we count pickups differently because we're not starting with not the same baseline, different other definition of the word baseline? Like, are we really starting from the current number of members in Congress?
Well, we're starting from Republicans being at 213 seats, which includes the vacancies such as Jackie Walorski. Is that the only Republican vacancy? I think they might be technically at 212, but Walorski would take it to 213.
Yeah.
So, and then Florida 5, for example, we do not include it. We have, looking here, 2 Republicans at 215 solid seats, but Florida 5 is not included in that because we have it on our chart. So that is included in the 29 races where Republicans have some sort of rated with some sort of advantage.
And is the new Georgia 6th also in that type
Correct.
of category? Okay.
Yeah, Georgia 6 is not in the solid 216 that we think Republicans. So in our ratings, Republicans start 2 away from what they need just on the solid.
And even Tennessee 5 is almost in that camp.
Right.
Mm.
And I've been
It's
looking.
a little
Tennessee
more
5 hasn't
competitive,
been.
but
I don't think Tennessee 5 has been called yet, but
I don't think so.
keeping an eye on it.
It does look like Decision Desk has a call for Mike DeWine. I know he's talked about that earlier. That was somebody somewhere had called it. Now Decision Desk has called it. So
And what's the update on the Senate race then? How close is the Senate race?
that is a good
Let's see
question.
here. Senate race looks like 29% in. Tim Ryan has 57 and Vance has 43.
And what in the governors? What's the percent in? And I mean, it's the same percent in, I assume. But what's
Yeah, it's about 28% in. I don't know why it would vary.
and what's the but what like is what's DeWine's
Compare the
percentage right
Vance
now?
and the DeWine.
54 to it's closer actually. It's 54 to 46.
And what's the 54-46 is the governors,
Yes.
and what's the Senate?
Senate right now, and I'm looking at. New
Oh,
York
it's
Times,
Democrat up
is-
57.
Yeah. 57-43.
Huh. Somebody
Well, so
better
that-
at math than me.
Hmm?
Help me out with the Ohio results for a second.
What was it?
Look at the Senate results versus the
Well,
governor's
I'm
results.
also looking at New York Times, which is using AP, and Decision Desk just called it for DeWine. So we need to compare using Decision Desk.
Okay, let me see.
Numbers to be accurate.
I mean, it's
here.
possible that they're using the same like numbers,
Yeah.
but they're just making different projections.
Right. So
Um,
I don't want to.
yeah, let me see if I
confuse
can pull it
everyone.
up.
And we do know
see
that's Mike DeWine on I saw we flashed the graphic up there.
Oh,
Yeah.
Mark DeWine. It made me feel so seen because I always just make up first names for politicians, and I once did
You
it
want
on
to
the
call
front.
him Mark?
Remember when I did it on the front page of Inside Elections once? It
We
was-
never make mistakes.
it
That's
was-
impossible.
his name was either Bob or Bill, and I put one of them. And the next day, you were like, "Why did you mess that up?" And I was like,
Because you just like to
"It
call
just
people by different
happens."
names.
So I get it.
At least they're kind of close. Like they start with the same letter. They're both one syllable.
I
I'm not
mean,
calling them like Stephen or anything.
there are 435 names in the House, 50 governors' names. Like, if you're getting half the letters correct, this is where everyone stops listening to me.
I remember when you once said you were like, if you're not in a competitive district, I don't know you.
It's true.
I was like, does it apply to your friendships as well?
That's why,
It was back when Tom Rice.
yeah, I was like,
Because
what?
we would get Tom and Tim mixed up a lot because no one really knew who he was.
Tom Rice was very confusing to me.
Yeah.
That was an interesting moment.
Do we-
Okay.
Do we have anything? I see some stuff from Connecticut coming in. Do we have anything in the 5th district that is conversational?
I'm still trying to figure out this Ohio
Oh, that's
thing.
The 5th district in, sorry, which state?
Connecticut.
Connecticut. I need to pull that one up too.
Where Johanna Hayes, the Democrat, is facing a surprisingly close re-election campaign against former state senator George Logan.
Yeah, I'm seeing single-digit percent in right now.
Okay.
Not worth talking about, really.
We do have
Forget
early
I asked.
results in Rhode Island too.
Okay.
With 71% in. Alan Fung currently has 49%, and Magaziner, the Democrat, has 48%. And this is one where the third-party candidate could definitely be a spoiler here for Magaziner because he has 3% at the moment.
Okay.
You know, honestly, at 3%, I almost wonder if he's back to kind of spoiling for both candidates' territory. I think if Gilbert, the moderate party candidate, were to be at 5 or 6%, that might be more worrisome for Magaziner. I think it'd be harder to blame him at least
Right.
for a loss if it's Fung 49, Magaziner 48, Gilbert 3. I think the real question in my mind is what's Fung's, what's his ceiling, what's his floor, and if Gilbert is getting 6% of the vote, does that mean Fung can win with 47, 46? We talk a lot about how Fung won this district in 2014. Of course, he won the district with like 43% because the moderate party candidate was winning 20% of the vote. So very different situation, but if I'm Magaziner, I'm probably happy to see Gilbert that low. Gives me more hope. And I'll note that the last poll we had out of that race, which was a DCCC internal poll, didn't have Gilbert as an option, and its result was Magaziner and Fung tied at 48. So
Sorry, I'm very confused by Ohio right now. It looks like a similar number of votes are in. I don't know why it would be so different in the Senate and governor's races, but
Yeah.
right now, it looks like Tim Ryan is up by like 186,000 votes, whereas DeWine is only up by 129 votes. If anyone. wants
Okay,
to
so what
help
I'm
me
seeing in
this out.
Ohio, and this is, so in the Senate race, it looks like Ryan's up by like 12%, and then the governor, DeWine's up by like 10%. So that's like
and this
a
is on
21% difference.
this is off the New York Times, which
Yeah,
is
this is,
using
AP.
data.
So yeah, pretty big difference, which I think is what we expected from pre-election polling, especially with DeWine being so popular. I wouldn't be surprised if he wins by like a gigantic margin. Yeah, we have to wait to see.
Okay.
I don't know if there's any counties in Ohio that have reported both the mail vote and also the election day vote, because I suspect that most of this is probably still that absentee vote that leans pretty Democratic compared to the state.
Okay. I'll keep an eye on that. So I was just like, it's rare to see such a kind of like an inverse result from Senate and governor's races.
Yeah, but I think it's definitely a very important dynamic to look at today, especially in some of these states like Pennsylvania and Georgia, where the governor's races look like much larger margins for the leading candidate versus the Senate races. So it'll be interesting to see like if those like close up or if there is a big ticket splitting this year.
Oh yeah, no, actually I should look at Georgia. That's a good point. Georgia in the governor's race, Kemp is up 8,000 votes, and in the Senate race, Warnock is up 120,000 votes. Yeah, we just gotta wait.
Hurry up and wait.
Just gotta hurry up and wait. It's a lot.
I saw North Carolina, it's up to 54% estimated in. Is there anything yet we can extrapolate from that? Or just too early?
I don't know, we're starting to
See.
get votes in Michigan.
In North Carolina 1, which is a likely Democratic district, so competitive, but less competitive than it probably would have been because the Republican nominee has been accused of domestic violence by multiple people, and Democrats have obviously been hitting her hard on that. Currently, the Democrat there, Don Davis, is leading by about 13 points with 60% of the vote in.
Yeah, and
Which I
CLF tried to make sure Sandy Smith did not get the nomination,
Yeah.
and then just has not played at all, where they've been spending millions of dollars in dozens and dozens of other races.
Yeah, the NRCC hasn't
And-
gotten involved. No other Republican outside groups have gotten
Nathan,
involved.
CLF is the
Oh, Congressional Leadership Fund.
Congressional Leadership Fund.
The biggest House super PAC on the Republican side, aligned with leadership and Kevin McCarthy.
Would you say the first is also closer just because it's the open seat with Butterfield gone?
I think folks thought it would be closer because it was an open seat, and that was before the primary. But because of the primary results on the Republican side, that kind of canceled out.
The implication of my question would be then, so in 2024, because there would be an incumbent and because maybe the Republican candidate wouldn't be such a lightning rod, that would just be a safe district? Like those two factors you think put it in likely?
I don't know.
I guess it depends on the overall environment and circumstances.
Yeah.
How competitive is North Carolina going to be as a presidential state? Going back to Florida, when we were talking about Florida not being as competitive as what it has been, looking at the 2024 Senate map, Rick Scott is one of the only, even potentially, in Florida being one of the only potentially vulnerable states for Republicans at all. So if Florida is not competitive in the Senate map, then Republicans or Democrats are playing almost all defense in 2024.
Yeah, I think looking at the Senate map in 24, especially if the Democrats end up losing the Senate tonight, in 24 they're going to have to defend. I think it's Montana and West Virginia, and I think it was Ohio as well.
And then, I mean, depending on how deep it goes, Michigan, Stabeno, Klobuchar, Minnesota, all
Right.
states that.
So it could turn into a scenario where maybe the Democrats don't have great options for trying to gain the majority in 24, so they'll have to look at like Florida and Texas, which are definitely Republican leaning, but they would probably want to look into like some way to try and make those competitive.
Yeah, actually,
I
I
think it's a
have
good
the
point.
list right here. Arizona with Sinema, Michigan, Stabenow, Minnesota, Klobuchar, Montana, Tester, Nevada, Rosen, New Mexico, Heinrich. These aren't all equal, but Ohio, Sherrod Brown, Pennsylvania, Casey, Virginia, Kane, Manchin in West Virginia, and Baldwin in Wisconsin.
So I
Pretty
remember
much
that
all of them.
class.
So, and Rick Scott is really the
Rick
only.
Scott's like the pickup opportunity for Democrats.
And maybe
basically.
maybe it's open if Rick Scott decides to run for president, but Florida, it's a very lopsided map in 24.
Yeah, that's going to be. That's a part of the reason why like tonight's results are so important is just setting a baseline for 2024, because you think. I guess, I mean, could be a better environment in a presidential year for Democrats, but they held on to those seats in 2018 for a reason.
They still lost seats that cycle too, didn't they, in the Senate?
They did,
Like that's just an unlucky class for the Democratic Party.
right. No, they lost Claire McCaskill. That was Heidi Heitkamp, Donnelly.
And this is a very lucky class for Republicans. 2022, 2016, 2010. Like this is the these are the
Lucky for
fortunate.
Ron Johnson.
Yeah.
We won't mention Ron Johnson by name, but he has been fortunate to run in some favorable cycles.
Yeah. Senate is weird. All right, Virginia 10 with 88% in. Looks like Jennifer Wexton's at 49. The Republican 51. So
Sorry,
it's
8
close.
or 80%?
88%
88%.
in.
Feels like a lot.
A lot of it's in, and it's very close.
Let's see, how are things looking in the 7th?
That might be one of the scarier things I've seen for Democrats tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And in the 7th district, which is more competitive, we've got 77% of the vote in, and the Republican leading by 5 points.
All right, so in a few minutes, so we're getting close to 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock closings. In about 4 minutes, we'll have a video that's going to set up the states that are coming up in the 9 o'clock hour. So just plugging that. What are we here in these last couple minutes before the video? What are we most? Is there anything I've noticed Maryland? Well, the governor's race was called, but do we have anything in the 6th district, which was a kind of a Republican reach district with Dave Trone, the district that goes out from all the way out to Western Maryland? Do we know anything about Maryland 6 yet?
It looks like we do not have any results there yet.
Okay.
Let's see. It's in the western part of the state.
Yeah, I mean, it goes
Effectively
all the
West
way from the
Virginia.
suburbs all the way out to Deep Creek, which is quite a combination of voters, if you ask me.
Deep Creek's
What do
Deep
you
Creek
mean?
is really nice.
I mean, culturally, there are some slight differences from one part of the district to the other, from the eastern to the western part.
The shift from Roscoe Bartlett to John Delaney may have been one of the most drastic kind of member-to-member transfers, just based on personality. And I mean, last I heard, Roscoe Bartlett was like a prepper now. He was living off the grid, whereas John Delaney, obviously multi-millionaire, didn't live in the district, ran for president.
That was one of my favorite interviews when Roscoe Bartlett came in And it was when Democrats redistricted and tried to redistrict him out of his seat, and he came in and he was talking about, oh, do you guys want to know poll numbers? And he had the memo, and he was like, why don't I just give them to you? And his consultants were like, no, yes, just give them to us. But he did not care. He was at the stage of his.
Try to get one of your kids during trick-or-treating to ask if he was going to run
No,
for president.
John Delaney, I'm pretty sure, it's dangerous to do things on a live stream.
Okay, never mind.
I'm pretty sure my kids,
Nothing happened.
years ago, John Delaney, they were trick-or-treating, and my kids were trick-or-treating on East Capitol Street in D.C. And it was either John Delaney or his stunt double who was handing out candy.
And it sounds like it was a really good, he had a good haul.
Quality
so,
candy.
Yeah.
Candies.
Not a,
When you've got that much money, you really have no excuse not to be handing out the king size.
So, John Delaney, if you're watching, feel free to chime in on the YouTube comments and tell me if that was you or not. All right, we've got about here in 1 minute. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this video, getting ready for 9 o'clock. I might get a refill of Mountain Dew.
gross.
All right, do we have that ready? All right, let's do it. Let's roll.
Time is flying here on election night, and we're getting closer and closer to our 9 p.m. poll closing, the second largest of the night. I'm here to take you through which races to watch and what factors our race call team will be including in their race call projections throughout the night. 15 states close their polls at 9 p.m. Eastern, including key Senate and gubernatorial races in Arizona and Wisconsin, as well as several battleground House races in New York and Colorado. Starting in Arizona, the race for governor has received a lot of attention, and deservedly so. It's currently rated as a toss-up by Inside Elections, and Republican nominee Kari Lake leads by just a few points in both Real Clear Politics and 538's polling averages. Lake, however, has received criticism for saying that she would not have certified President Joe Biden's victory in Arizona if she had been governor at the time. In the Senate race, though, Democratic incumbent Mark Kelly's Republican opponent, venture capitalist Blake Masters, has walked back some of his more hardline assertions on abortion and immigration in an attempt to win support among moderate voters across the state, but he has consistently trailed Kelly in polling. And as always in Arizona, both of these races will come down to the margin in Maricopa County, which houses roughly 60% of the state's voters. Both Hobbs and Kelly will need to win Maricopa County by at least 1.5 points to win, though Kari Lake could conceivably outperform in Maricopa because of her visibility from her time as a news anchor there. Moving on, Wisconsin's gubernatorial election between incumbent Democratic Governor Tony Evers and Republican nominee Tim Michels is certainly one to watch. This race is virtually tied in both 538 and RCP's polling averages and is rated as a toss-up according to Inside Elections. The counties to watch here are Dorr and Sauk. Trump won both in 2016 when he carried the state, then Biden won both counties with his statewide victory in 2020. Evers is forecasted by DDHQ to run relatively even with his former lieutenant governor and now Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate in Wisconsin, Mandela Barnes, who is taking on tried and tested Republican incumbent Senator Ron Johnson. Johnson has a track record of overperforming expectations through exceptional strength in northeast Wisconsin and the WOW counties, Waukesha, Ozaukee, and Washington, that compose the traditionally conservative Milwaukee suburbs. Most notably in 2016, he defeated former Democratic Senator Russ Feingold by 4%, despite trailing in almost every single poll. As such, DDHQ rates the contest as likely Republican. Now let's take a look at some key House races. Starting in Arizona's 2nd District, Democratic incumbent Congressman Tom O'Halloran faces aspiring Freedom Caucus member Republican Eli Crane. This seat became 10 points more Republican via redistricting, and the only reason O'Halloran is still even competitive is that Crane may underperform a more generic Republican candidate. But if Republicans are to flip the House tonight, there's virtually no scenario in which they lose a Trump +8 district. Moving on, the state of Colorado gained a seat in the House following the 2020 census, and the state's independent redistricting commission drew up the new 8th district to be a highly competitive Biden +4 seat. Democratic State Representative Yadira Caraveo faces Republican State Senator Barbara Kirkmeyer, who has a much stronger home advantage within the district. Colorado's 8th should be fertile ground for a strong Republican overperformance, considering the district is right trending, much less educated and more Hispanic than the rest of the state. Next up, though, is Iowa's 3rd. Sydney Axne is the lone remaining Democrat representing Iowa in Congress, and she is very much at risk against Republican State Senator Zach Nunn. This Des Moines-based seat voted for Trump by less than a point in 2020, while Axne held on by just over a point. In 2020, Axne won a very similar version of this district, despite only carrying one of the 19 counties. Finally, the state of New York features several intriguing House races in these midterms, but I'm going to focus on the two most competitive. First up is the 19th district. Republican Mark Molinaro was upset in an August special election for this district by Democrat Pat Ryan, who is now running as the incumbent in the 18th district. Now he faces Josh Riley in this R+1 seat. And lastly, New York's 22nd district was vacated by popular Republican incumbent John Katko as it lost much of its old territory in redistricting. Now Syracuse-based, the contest features two Navy veterans, Democrat Francis Cannoli and Republican Brandon Williams. The district would have voted for Biden by 8% in 2020, and to hold this seat, Republicans will need to keep Democratic margins down in Onondaga County, while overperforming in Madison and Oneida. That does it for the 9 p.m. poll closing. Back to the experts in the studio.
Thank you. Welcome back, everyone, or welcome for those of you who are joining us here at the top of the hour. I'm Nathan Gonzalez with Inside Elections, joined by our Inside Elections team and friends, including Ryan Matsumoto, Jacob Rubashkin, Bradley Washer, Aaron Covey, Leah Escarinam. It helps if I point, it just makes it more awkward. You all just saw what's coming up here in the 9 o'clock hour, but I want to go back to a state that closed previously, Georgia. Ryan and Jacob, you guys are watching Georgia in the Senate race. What are we seeing?
Yeah, so Jacob found this county, Oconee County, Georgia, which is greater than 95% reporting per the New York Times estimate. And it looks like Walker's winning that by 34.5 points, but that's an underperformance versus Loeffler's 36-point win in 2021. And you might remember that she lost by 2 points. So that bodes well for Mr. Warnock statewide.
The big picture, we're seeing results very similar to the 2021 special election, which Warnock won by 2 points. And looking specifically at some of these smaller counties, I mean, Georgia has God knows how many counties, and some of these smaller 159 counties in Georgia, and some of these smaller counties have been reporting most of their or all of their votes. And so just comparing those numbers to the numbers that we saw coming out of the 2021 special, and it looks like they're running relatively similar. Obviously, with a 2-point race in that 2021 special, it means this is really close, but we're not seeing a huge drop-off for Warnock in these areas.
And it looks like we're also Oliver, the Libertarian, at less than 2% statewide, which increases the likelihood that one of them could get over 50% tonight, or at least when all the votes are counted without a runoff.
Yeah. You know, the lower Walker is, the lower Oliver is, you know, the more votes there are to go around. And, you know, I think both parties absolutely want to put this one away tonight. I don't think that anyone really wants to go to a runoff election again. And Raphael Warnock's even been running ads saying, you know, you don't want me at your Thanksgiving dinner, so vote now so we don't have to go to a runoff. I think obviously both parties would like to win, but both parties also want to win now rather than later.
And do we have any to update everyone here at the top? We at Inside Elections, we have 83 House races that we've rated as competitive. So far, only 4 have been called tonight, and none of them in our either toss-up or tilting in our most competitive categories. But I'm scanning through to see if there have been any new ones fresh, and I'm not seeing any.
I don't believe so.
Sorry, Aaron?
I don't believe so. I was just checking that during the break.
Where do things stand? What about Texas 34th district? We were talking about that earlier, and Cameron County, the race between Myra Flores and Vicente Gonzalez. Do we have any new numbers in Texas 34?
Let's see here. Looks like we don't for now.
Or we can go one by one through small New Hampshire towns. Again, that would be.
Let's see.
And also, I put out the tweet.
Yeah.
Texas has a really great Secretary of State website for reporting elections, which I appreciate. I'm not just saying that because I'm from Texas, but it is one of the better ones. There's quite a range when you're going to like the state's individual websites. Some are better organized than others.
They also publish official results by congressional district, so you don't have to do that calculation yourself.
Yes, which is also really helpful.
And Bradley can tell you, since he's done a lot of our number crunching, that sometimes you get websites like that, or sometimes you get a grainy PDF version of precinct results, and it is not as consumable. All right.
One of our friends, who's not here, Matt Holt at National Journal, noted that at this point it looks like Sherry Beasley looks like she's doing better than Cal Cunningham was around this time in 2020. I don't know if we want to look at some of those numbers, but obviously that's a race that, as much as I think there are reports that Schumer blamed Cal Cunningham for losing that, it would have been really hard for any Democrat to win North Carolina as long as Trump was winning. But worth keeping an eye on that race.
Well, if Democrats end up holding control, I know there were some Democratic strategists I was talking to were making the case that Beasley would deserve credit, even if she loses, but the fact that she kept the race close in order to draw money, Republican money, into the race. You could maybe say the same for Tim Ryan in Ohio, the Republican money that could have gone to New Hampshire or Arizona or Colorado or Washington. And so there was some pro Beasley voices out there, even if she ends up falling short.
Well, there's also something to be said about building up infrastructure before 2024, right? Like that's kind of what Stacey Abrams was credited with her 2018 run. Obviously, this is going to be, she's having what is she rated as?
Which
the
one?
Governor's race, Stacey Abrams?
Lean
Republican. Yeah. So obviously that's going to be a tough one, but the idea that she put in all that money and all that organization into Georgia in 2018 helped Democrats theoretically in 2020. Could see the same thing happen in North Carolina, which does sometimes get ignored by Democrats because it usually doesn't go toward Democrats. So.
And Colorado closed, but closed here at 9 o'clock Eastern time, but do we know anything from Colorado? So Colorado, we're watching the Senate race, which would be a reach for Republicans with Joe O'Dea against Michael Bennet. And then we're watching a couple of competitive House districts in the 7th and 8th district. I don't think do we have anything conversational there?
I have a different Southwest state.
Okay, go.
So from the Nevada guru himself, John Ralston of the Nevada Independent, he is reporting that whatever mail has been dropped off today in Clark County, which is the main source of Democratic votes in Nevada, home of Las Vegas, will not be tabulated tonight. It may actually take until Thursday. What will be tabulated tonight are Election Day in person and all the early and mail ballots already in the system. So what he says to expect then is Republicans to be ahead in the vote counts tonight, but a substantial outstanding portion of the vote there left uncounted for another day or so that should help Democrats statewide and in those 3 congressional districts.
Interesting.
So there's 5 competitive races, all important, that we're watching that would overlap with Clark County. So we should.
The 3 congressional races.
Right, plus
and governor and Senate.
So should we expect results probably not to come in for any of those tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I think, all 3 of those races are highly competitive. Obviously, it depends on the portion of of votes in each district. But statewide, certainly, I think you can't. Cortez Masto and Sisolak both need those votes to win.
It's not even snowing there, right? It's not even
It's not even snowing.
a weather
no.
issue.
So it seems like if we're not going to hear from Nevada tonight, that's a much lower chance of us knowing this. I mean, it's not impossible,
Yeah.
but it's a lower chance of us knowing who wins the Senate.
Correct.
Right.
Well,
ABC is projecting a win for Jennifer Wexton in Virginia's 10.
Okay.
Interesting.
Let's check our.
Yeah, I remember earlier we were saying it looked somewhat close, but I'm guessing more of the absentee vote might have been reported.
Looks like 83% in. According to AP, Wexton is up a little over 2 points.
so where does Wexton fit in the overall? I remember when Wexton was called in 2018, it was like the beginning of a Democratic wave.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's what we're seeing right now. Where does this fit in? Does this just mean like if there is a wipeout, it didn't?
Yeah, so this was, I think we were likely Democratic, so expected that she would win. If she lost, then it would be a gigantic red tsunami beyond our imagination. Because the seat got bluer since the last time, so.
Okay.
This was one of the late races where the Republicans had a good poll, released it, and it was in the buzz with this one in Virginia's 10th district, Julia Brownlee in California's 26th district. There's kind of a crop of sleeper races that a few we added to our list, a few we didn't, but it's not great news for Democrats, but it's sort of in that it could have been worse. It could have been worse category.
And where is Luria at the moment?
That is a good question.
She was down by like 12 last time I checked, but let's see here. Yeah, it looks like she's still down by 11 with 67% of the votes in. Now she would be, I would be surprised if Republicans don't flip this seat. She's definitely one of the most vulnerable incumbents in general across the country. There's a couple that are more vulnerable on the Democratic side, but she was definitely in the top 10, if not top 5.
Yeah.
So real quick on North Carolina, I've been looking at some of these counties that seem to be fully reporting, and it looks like, let's see, what are these two? So there was Anson County, and that one, it looks like Bud is actually flipping a Biden county and doing about 10 points better than Trump did. And then another one was, let's see, Pamlico County, Bud was outperforming Trump by 2. And then Scotland County, he was outperforming Trump by 4.
Where in the state are these counties?
I think a bunch of them are like sort of like in the southeast part of the state.
Okay.
But yeah, based on what I'm seeing, I think North Carolina, it looks good for Republicans so far. Seems like Bud might outperform Trump, who won the state by like 1.5.
Now I know like Beasley, that's not the areas that we would want, that Beasley has been focusing on and has been trying to turn out the vote in, like North Carolina.
Right, yeah.
It's kind
if
of
she can get more of a turnout advantage there.
Where she could get more of a potential turnout
yeah,
advantage.
so that's definitely something to watch.
And then of course all the usual, Raleigh, Charlotte.
All right. There might be starting to see some Seth Magaziner.
I think did he just take the lead?
Let's see.
I'm seeing a few different things. I'm just trying to figure out which ones are newsworthy.
This is Rhode Island's 2nd district, to bring everyone up to.
So they have 90% of the vote in Rhode Island too, and Magaziner has 51% and Fung has 46%.
Okay, where does that fit in?
And what's out? Before we do what's outstanding? Do we know? Is there any significant
See which
area where we're
county.
missing? Votes?
It does look like Cranston, Providence, Warwick still have estimated about 3,000 votes left there, and those are the highest proportion.
Magaziner's lead.
His lead is currently about 5 points, 4.5.
No, in total votes, sorry.
Oh, total votes. It's, let's see, looks like it's about 9,000.
So Cranston can't save Fung.
Yeah, Cranston alone could not save Fung, which Fung was the mayor of Cranston. That's why that would be significant for him. But this is a Biden plus 14 district, is that right? So it would definitely, it's always been a reach for Republicans, but they've been particularly bullish on this because Fung was kind of seen as probably the only Republican who could win here.
Yeah. And where's in Rhode Island, sticking with Rhode Island, the governor's race? Because I feel like there was a little bit of buzz. Was there a late Republican surge against the governor who ascended, McKee, who ascended to the governorship when
Where is
the previous governor joined the administration?
Right, right.
It doesn't look like Decision Desk is reporting any, unless I update. Yeah, no, we're not seeing any Rhode Island numbers at all.
Let me refresh.
Unless I'm missing something there.
What about, I know Oklahoma closed at 8 o'clock Eastern, I believe. And that governor's race had the potential to break against the tide with the party switching Joy Hoffmeister against Republican Governor Kevin Stitt. Do we have anything of note in Oklahoma in the governor's race yet?
I see 50% in just about, with Stitt up by 16, 56 to 40.
Do we know, and is it disproportionate in its geography?
I'm not looking at a map, but I am looking at the breakdown between early votes and election day votes. And it's about 200,000 early votes, 233,000 election day. But I don't see the geography anywhere.
Okay. I'm just looking. Just give me one competitive house race. That's all.
I know.
That's all I want. Is that too much to ask?
It's a little entitled, don't you think?
What should we set the over under at like 9:45?
How many we'll have?
Huh?
You mean how many races we'll have called by then?
Well, like when we're gonna get like a house race that's in the tilt or toss up category called.
That's good. Yeah, I might take the over at the
Yeah.
so later at this point, based on the current trends.
Let's see here.
Anything? I mean, Minnesota closed at 9 o'clock. We're watching the key race in Minnesota. The key house race is the 2nd district with Angie Craig and Tyler Kistner in that rematch. Is there?
Let's see here. That one also is interesting because the third-party candidate actually died a month ago, but her name is still on the ballot. But that didn't seem to affect how well she was polling in a lot of polls we saw after that.
She even ticked up in a couple points. I feel in some of the
Yeah,
polls.
and that's even with, I think a couple of them, it was an informed question, like now knowing that Overby has passed, and it was still around the same.
I'm seeing nothing for Minnesota.
Nothing from
Yeah, I
Minnesota
haven't
too.
seen
I mean, the
anything.
governor's race is also wasn't extremely competitive, but we moved it one notch as it looked like some Democratic areas, Democratic states such as Minnesota and New Mexico were getting more, potentially more competitive at the end with Republicans coming on late.
NBC News is projecting Jennifer Wexton.
So that's NBC and
Was it ABC,
ABC?
earlier?
I think that was ABC, yeah. Let's see here.
we've got
We should just talk about how great Virginia is at having clear results from their public access project. It is every year a
Oh,
delight to work through that website. CNN's projecting Wexton.
I have a feeling she's in good shape. We'll wait for the official
like
call on
Vega
our side.
is still leading in Virginia 7, that's Bamberger's district, by 2.5%, with estimated 86% in. So it's tightening up, definitely.
Because she was at, what was her lead earlier?
I think she was up by 5 points.
Okay.
About half an hour ago, or last time I checked.
Time is starting
Yeah,
to
it's all
blur a little bit.
blending.
We go. We got the Virginia 7 results on the screen there.
Has anyone seen anything meaningful out of New Jersey 7?
Do we have any-
That's Malinowski.
It's Malinowski,
Yeah.
another really
It's
vulnerable.
like 17% in right now. It's Malinowski. It's 64-35, but it's very early, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's gonna tighten.
Yeah.
Got another town in New Hampshire that most of the vote is in. Dover, New Hampshire. Hassan up 40 points. Biden won Dover by 32 points. Another Stratford County seat. Do we have numbers out of Pappas?
Let me see. I've been watching that.
So, to recap, we haven't found a New Hampshire area yet where Baldock is overperforming.
Yeah.
Is that?
I think I might have seen like one or two where he was overperforming Trump, but only by a few points. But remember, he needs to overperform Trump by like 7 points on average. And a lot of these New Hampshire towns really look a lot like the 2020 presidential. Some of them are even a bit better for Democrats than 2020. So I wouldn't be surprised if New Hampshire gets called like relatively early. And definitely meaningful for Democrats, and that it looks like it could be kind of close with some of those final polls, but it looks like they'll hang on here.
Yeah, and Pappas, in DDHQ results, Pappas is currently up by 17 points. That's generous. Obviously, that'll come down a little bit, but I am interested how he's doing on a township-by-township basis compared to where Biden was. It seems like New Hampshire is turning out all right for Democrats thus far. Still early, though.
Scrolling through the list of scanned races, it is not a competitive race, but it is one of the biggest names in Congress. That, if you were wondering, the race has been called, DDHQ has called the New York race for Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So if you were planning on waiting for that call tonight to go to bed, you are free to go. But please leave your computer on to the YouTube channel so we can continue to get the traffic. But you are dismissed at that point if that was your hot race. Georgia, anything new in Georgia?
I think the last time I checked, I think there was only like 2 counties that were like greater than 95% reporting. There's Oconee they were talking about where Walker's doing like 2 points better than 2021. And there's another one, Greene County, where it looked like Walker was doing 2 points better than Loeffler. So just based on those two, it looks like Georgia, looks like it's going to be pretty close, but again, just 2 counties, so we'll see as more of them report all their votes.
And there's the map of Georgia.
Yeah, DDHQ results, Raphael Warnock currently hovering at about 51.5%. Herschel Walker back at 46.7%.
Not really sure.
That magic number, 50% for either candidate to avoid an arduous runoff next month. Still quite a bit of vote to be counted, though. So, a lot to watch in Georgia.
And can we go to Pennsylvania? I mean, not actually go, but I know we haven't talked about Pennsylvania in a while with the Senate race in particular. Or is the governor's race? How close is that to being? Do we think to being called? Because it's not expected to be hot.
Yeah, Pennsylvania Senate, there's not much in yet. Looks like we have estimated 16% of the vote in, and yeah, Fetterman, he will not win by 30 points. Sorry to disappoint you Democrats.
Bold claims there, Ryan.
Yeah, I'm guessing, yeah, most of this is probably this bunch of counties reporting some of the mail votes. I don't know if I see any that are like close to fully reporting.
Philadelphia reported some votes. Fetterman won those 92 to 6%, I believe. So, you know, he's not gonna. His lead is gonna come down here, but it doesn't look like we've got anywhere where we have anywhere close to a full count of votes. So hard to compare back to previous years. You know,
I mean, I think it is possible with the governor's race, if it does turn out like the poll suggested that Shapiro is up by a lot, that maybe once we get a few counties fully reporting in the governor's race, they'll be able to call it.
Yeah.
But the Senate will probably take longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, Pennsylvania. If we look at
All the House races in Pennsylvania that we're watching are reporting like under 20% of the estimated vote in, so
Yeah.
I don't think we can
And we're
we should be
watching-
drawing any conclusions from that.
And we're watching 7th District with Wild,
Mhm.
8th District Cartwright, 17th District open, right? Connor
Yeah.
Lamb.
Yeah.
Well, Connor Lamb open over in Western PA.
And then maybe the 12th district.
you know,
which
we've
is-
got a call in Pennsylvania's 5th district, Mary Gay Scanlon. Not really a competitive race, but you know, one of those 4 districts that were redrawn in 2018 helped Democrats capture the majority there. The other thing I'll note is obviously we've got quite a bit of vote still to be counted in Pennsylvania. In the vote that we have counted, Josh Shapiro leading by about 40 points, John Fetterman only leading by about 30 points. So interesting to see if that gap persists. That would kind of line up with polling. You know, we've seen Shapiro with a low double-digit lead and Fetterman in a closer race. So depending on whether you think Josh Shapiro can get to, you know, a particular number, might determine how you think the Senate race is going to come out. You know, if Shapiro can get to 55, then Fetterman might be in strong position. But again, still a lot out there left to count, and that lingering issue in Philadelphia with some portion of the absentee votes not going to be counted for quite some time.
Here's an interesting call as we're waiting for competitive races to be called, but North Dakota's at-large House race called for Republican Kelly Armstrong. I don't know, either Jacob or Aaron, tell us why North Dakota, for a while we were watching that for a quirky result because...
Yeah, so North Dakota, you know, Kelly Armstrong, Republican congressman, at-large seat, didn't have a Democratic opponent, was running against an independent named Kara Mund, who is a former Miss America, I believe. I think Miss America.
An intern for Senator John Hoeven?
Intern for Senator Hoeven, graduate of Harvard Law School, came back to North Dakota to run for this seat. And there was a flurry of polling that came out about 6 weeks ago now that suggested that that actually might be a more interesting race than people were giving it credit for. The Democratic Party of North Dakota, which was not supporting Mund, but has obviously is opposed to Armstrong, put out a poll showing it at just a 4-point race. Armstrong's campaign went back and put out a poll, 3 polls actually, showing it a wider race, indicating that they really wanted to get ahead of a narrative that this was a close contest. And there was some sense that perhaps we could get a quirky result. This is a state that is very Republican now, but it wasn't that long ago, you know, Team North Dakota. You had Senators Kent Conrad and Congressman Earl Pomeroy and
Byron Dorgan.
Senator Byron Dorgan, right, who really had a stranglehold on the state for quite some time. At the moment, you know, it doesn't look like Kelly Armstrong's going to lose. Obviously, we've got that race called. The Senate race in North Dakota also one worth at least keeping an eye on. There is a well-funded third-party candidate running to the right of Senator Hoeven, attacking him as a Biden stooge, if you can believe it, because he voted for the infrastructure bill. So it looks like we've got a call in for Hoeven as well. Independent Rick Becker not going to make it to the Senate, but even in states that we tend to think of as safe, there can be interesting politics, interesting things going on, worth keeping tabs on.
Well, I am happy that this is the only place someone's going to get a conversation about North Dakota tonight. So
Even North Dakota is not talking about North Dakota today.
brutal.
They don't say
Brutal.
that. I'm saying that as somebody who's have a soft spot. It's true.
You know, it'll be interesting going slightly further south to South Dakota. Both the at-large race and the Senate election, John Thune, have been called, which is not a surprise. But Governor Kristi Noem is also up for re-election. She should win. We have it in our solid category, but there have been charges of nepotism with regard to her daughter, and some issues there. And so I'm kind of interested in the margin in South Dakota in that governor's race, but I would still be surprised if she is not elected. I'm old enough to remember when she was a top presidential candidate, and not many people are talking about Governor Noem as a presidential candidate anymore.
Was she ever really, though, a top presidential candidate? I mean, she was in the conversation, but I just don't even know if like she was in that higher tier.
We'll see.
No?
I mean,
Trump really liked her, right? Like he was like, this is like the governor who's being loyal during the pandemic. So he really liked her. Decision Desk looks like they made a projection in the Georgia governor's race. We got that.
That's big.
Brian
Take it.
Kemp. Looks
Competitive.
like Decision Desk is projecting that Brian Kemp will be reelected governor in Georgia. Not a surprise. This was very much the way the race was going in the polls, but still big news. And just thinking about like Stacey Abrams' last 4 years, another defeat, and how she's become such a major national figure, and I don't know.
but she could
it's a
take
big
the
deal.
better route and leverage this to run for president in 2024.
She would have already done that though, because she and Beto lost together in 2018, and then just one of them ran for president.
Well, at least we have a call.
Where's Amy McGrath? That's the question.
Well,
Where's she?
at least we have a call. We're going to celebrate victories with calls in even semi-competitive races.
It was a lean Republican race.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Why wasn't it a likely Republican race?
You don't need to kick people when they're down in the polls.
No, I think that there's a real reason for that, and that's because Georgia requires 50% plus one to avoid a runoff. And even as we saw Kemp put up significant leads, in real substantial leads in polling, of mid-single digits, right? He was always floating around that 50% number, 50, 51, 52, and it was Abrams who was back at 44, 45. And so I think that it'll be interesting to see where he ends up, but the added uncertainty, I think everyone kind of understood he was going to place first. But the added uncertainty of whether he could get over that 50% threshold, depending on how the Libertarian, I believe, is that Shane Hazel? Is that the Libertarian running in that race? How he did and how the composition of the electorate looked. You know, there was always a possibility that Kemp could get 49.9, and Abrams still might get 45, and the other 4%, would scatter.
Interesting. Okay, that makes sense, because I was just thinking about, again, 2018 in Texas. I don't think we ever moved that out of likely Republican, but we, at that point, weren't seeing, I think, either Cruz or O'Rourke regularly over 50%.
Georgia's just more fundamentally a more competitive state than what Texas
Yeah.
is.
Well, but would you have said that in 2018? That's the thing.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
I can't be held accountable for what I said in 2018. All right, where are we on some of our key races? Where do we want to go? Do we want to go to North Carolina? Back to the North Carolina Senate race?
I feel like Virginia probably.
Let's go to
there,
Virginia then.
Because North Carolina also has all those absentee ballots.
Has Virginia, has the 2nd district, any movement in the 2nd or the 7th?
Let's see here.
The second's up to 70% estimated in.
And where is it?
It's Kiggins at 55 and Luria at 45.
Okay.
It's about where it was earlier. Vega's still up by about 2 points with 87% estimated N. And Wexton's up by 6 with 80% estimated N.
We're still waiting on an official DDHQ call in Virginia 10.
Is the pace right now indicative of a larger, are we feeling less confident that we'll know the results for the race for the House tonight?
My feeling still, coming into tonight and remains, I feel like we'll know control, but the margin will be up in the air for a few days, particularly with 6 races, I think, in California. And Nevada, now we know 3 races we're probably not going to know.
Yeah.
So I'm holding out hope that we at least know control of the House, but the margin will be a question mark, I think.
You said in actuality it's like 3 seats probably, given the ones that they had baked in, like Florida's 5th and Georgia's 6th.
Right.
And they've already flipped one because Florida 13.
Whoa. How are we counting Florida 13? 13?
13, Chris
13.
seat.
Well, we had been counting that one way, and then we started counting in another way when we moved it into a more competitive category.
Right, but I don't think it was in the 3 or the 2 more automatic ones that, like, because Nathan was talking about the other Florida district that would have been like Florida 5, which was basically an automatic flip,
Yeah.
and then Georgia 6, which I don't think has been called yet, but Republicans should win that, obviously. So I think Florida 13 would then count towards that number then.
Florida 13, since we had it rated in a Republican category, would add up if Republicans win all of the ones that we think that they're favored to win.
Yeah.
That is in the number that gets them up to 216. So that would be too short.
I was talking more about just flips in general, not like thinking about.
And redistricting makes it
Yeah.
just because there's those new districts that are, which we haven't called any. I don't think any redistricting new districts are not. None of those are called yet. What's happening in Iowa? The Iowa Senate race with Grassley running for re-election. That kind of had a little bit of buzz when Ann Seltzer came out with her poll that had it 3 points, and then had one just a few days ago that had it at a much wider margin. But is there anything?
Seeing only 14% estimated in for that, with Franken 59, Grassley 41.
Looks
Got
like
that.
nothing.
Yeah, it looks like another
Significant.
state where looking at it county by county, I don't see any counties that are fully reporting. So, yeah, I'm guessing similar story to some of these other states where the Democrats' current apparent lead is probably just driven by a lot of mail votes.
Yeah, not a lot of color on that map. Quite yet. Well, if people wanted to know how exciting it is on election night, this is sometimes very typical of what it is waiting for results.
Well, and I think that's why sometimes you get analysis that's maybe a little more entertaining, but not totally
Informative.
informative. I think that's really tricky because everybody wants to know, everybody's concerned, but like you just gotta wait. And so in that waiting game, sometimes things get a little out of control.
It looks like ABC and NBC called Colorado Senate race for Bennett.
So what is that? Let's look at the DDHQ numbers on Colorado Senate. What is that?
Let's see.
What is that showing?
Currently, for the Senate,
Seeing blank.
I'm not seeing anything on the dashboard at the
Okay.
moment. But that would be one of those races that was a reach for Republicans, but definitely wasn't one that we expected them to win.
Right. In a massive wave, you would expect
In a
that
massive
could
way.
be.
Yeah.
This was one when Chairman Rick Scott, NRSC Chairman Rick Scott, his big number was 55, which it's
Counting
his job to
Colorado.
talk about big numbers because he's chairman of the NRSC. But to get to 55, you would need New Hampshire, where Hassan is doing well. You would need Colorado, which is up on the screen, defeating Michael Bennet. Washington State, defeating Senator Murray with Tiffany Smiley.
And I know we've been talking about this a little, but it looks like Washington State might probably be more competitive than Colorado in terms of those Senate races, despite the partisan lean of Washington
Was
State.
there a late poll that the Smiley campaign put out? On the Twitters, I saw that they put out something that
They
was
put out
very
like a
close.
Trafalgar
Oh.
plus, like, I think that.
It wasn't her pollster?
I think they'd also had it tied, because I looked at that, and I think they tied it like 48 or 47, somewhere around that. But they'd also had it tied, I think, like a month ago. So I don't know if there was any significant momentum.
Let's see. No, it was more information.
But it was close, right?
It was yeah, they had it 47-47. They had previously had it in in late October. They'd had it 46-46. Those are the only two from that poll. They said they had it a 4-point race in September, 44-48. Yeah, I mean, I would not be shocked at all if Washington State is closer than Colorado ultimately.
And it doesn't close till 11 o'clock, but we're talking about it now.
Yeah, speaking of states that are not necessarily ones that we always talk about, I think we should take a look at some of Oklahoma
Yeah.
gov numbers. I'd
Yeah.
actually be interested in, it looks like right now the Republican incumbent is leading, but I'm very interested in everyone's thoughts on that race because normally we would not be watching an Oklahoma governor's race.
What are the current numbers there?
It looks like Stitt is up by,
See 17, about 16. So I see it 71% in, 57 Stitt, 40% Hoffmeister.
yeah, I have him that he's up 105 right now, 105,000 votes.
Okay.
So it's looking good for Stitt, which, that would have been a major upset. It hasn't been called by Decision Desk yet.
Yeah,
But-
so, I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
Yeah, looking at comparing the counties in Oklahoma to 2020 presidential, Trump won Oklahoma by 32 points. And it doesn't look like I'm finding really any counties where Hoffmeister is outperforming Biden by about that much. She is outperforming him by like a lot. Like a lot of these counties are maybe like 25-point or 20-point over performances. But it does look decent for Stitt so far based on what I'm seeing.
Okay.
I would note that on the YouTubes, there is a call for the guy in the blue shirt to talk more.
Those are all of my students.
I will
made
say
the
one of them
mistake.
does come from a high school debate champion, Daniel Kind, who we should give a shout out to.
And good old Max Goldberg in Utah too. Your state's still coming, bud. We're waiting.
But But even if they are friends, we're all a fan of the guy in the blue shirt.
Agreed.
Bay.
Absolutely.
Is that?
Oh, another thing about Oklahoma, I'm looking at some of the betting markets for this, and they seem to have the Republican at 99%. So it looks pretty good for him. right now, I think.
I never know what to.
They can be off for sure, but I think if it says 99, then definitely not looking good for the Democrats there.
It looks like we're getting a call in for Rhode Island too.
Okay.
From Decision Desk for Magaziner.
Is that our first toss-up race?
Well, we have that in.
Do we have tilt D or toss-up?
No, we moved. We moved it to toss-up.
We do,
late.
yeah.
So explain to me why it's a big deal that Magaziner won, considering he's in a district that Biden won pretty significantly, correct?
I think, well, one, Republicans had poured a lot of money into this district, and it was up there with like New York 17, which is Sean Patrick Maloney's district, that was still a reach, but was one that Republicans felt pretty good about based on the candidate they had running there, and just some of like the specific nuances of that district. But, and I think the public polls had also shown Fung ahead more so often than Magaziner for the most part. It was somewhere tied, but quite a few had Fung leading, and so I think, you know, most Republicans were probably felt confident about being bullish in Fung. But
so it came down to candidates.
A lot
really.
of it came down to candidate. I wouldn't say, yeah, this is not necessarily a bellwether race. I mean, it's like, again, like a Biden plus 14 district. Like, we could still see Republicans winning in districts Biden won by low single digits in other parts of the country.
Fung became one of the, you know, he was featured in the New York Times. I mean, there was a lot. He became one of the faces of the Republican march to the majority. So it's a big deal. Now, it could end up being, I remember 2006, so I'll date myself, when Democrats had a huge wave, and Tammy Duckworth was one of the best. She was one of the most talked about House candidates, and she lost. So to recap, this is with Rhode Island's 2nd district. This is the 5th competitive House race that we have a call on, but the first toss-up race, and it's going for Democrats.
So this is the first toss-up race
that we have a call in.
Wow.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, it's toss-up. I feel like we can't. If we're gonna like choose like one race,
Seth Magazine did not lead in a single poll, I think.
So was it a single poll at all?
I don't. Do you remember seeing any
I was trying to
polls
remember.
where Magaziner?
I know they had some tied.
There was that one that was tied.
Yeah.
I don't recall ever seeing him up.
There might have been some private polling. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Was there like a bunch of undecideds? I'm pulling up right now because maybe it was just the undecided split.
Right, it could be that Fung was able to get a lead in some of these polls by getting into, I don't know, mid-40s or something, but then that was sort of like a ceiling, and then the fundamentals of the district ends up taking over.
Well, and that was I think that was the plausible Democratic argument. It just never, like, we didn't see it happening until tonight, apparently. Like, it was, and that's kind of what, it just hadn't been coming to fruition, but.
And yeah, we saw this in some other races with, especially with Republicans, I think, in like 2018 and 2020 in the Senate, where you would have the Democrats maybe get to a tie or even a lead in some of these polls, but they'd still be at, I don't know, like 43, 45%. And then sort of like the partisanship of the state or the district takes over in the end. And then that's what carries the candidates to the finish line.
I do have another data point in favor of Democrats winning Rhode Island 2nd. So we have statewide election results calculated by congressional district going between 2016 and 2020. A Democrat has never lost a statewide election in Rhode Island 2nd, but the closest a Republican came to winning was in 2018 governor when Fung lost by 5.
When does that include 2014 governor?
No.
Okay, because he
yeah.
won it in 2014 governor, but he won it with only in the low 40s.
But even in 2018, he still lost by 5. That's a Democrat-favored year.
Yeah.
But
I don't think he was ever going to get more than 50%, but I think it became more and more possible that he could win with 50 or even 49. I think given what we know about the election heading in, Democrats need everything they can get, right? Like, this is the lowest of low-hanging fruit for them.
Which is part of Leah's point, that this is not, we did have it as a toss-up by the district. It was driven though by Fung's
Yeah.
strength as a candidate, not by the fundamentals of
Yeah.
toss-up districts or vulnerable districts. This is just proving that Democrats can win in heavily Biden districts. Right?
That's why I was like, if of all of the races to be called first, this wouldn't be the one that I would choose.
You're taking the fun out of this, Leah.
But-
You're taking the fun out of this.
fun out
But
of
here's
it.
but here's what it does show us.
Love it. And that's the
You
night.
really went
folks.
all in on that joke.
What it does show us potentially is that there was not a massive polling error in favor of Republicans
In this district, yeah. I
in
agree
this
with that.
district. Right. So again, who knows? But like that is one thing that's more representative that we could pull out of this, even if we're not like, well, Democrats are going to win every every totally blue district in the country.
Right. And if we look at other races that have been called, like New Hampshire, for example, it doesn't look like there's a massive massively understated Republican votes.
Right, and if anything, it looks like they understated the Democrats in New Hampshire.
That leads to the bigger question. How are we trusting these indicators and fundamentals so far in the night? Like, we made our decisions on ratings looking at these things, and it seems like it's lining up pretty well. But is that confidence going to stick with you all for the rest of the evening?
I'd like to see at least double digits out of 83 call.
Yeah, we haven't seen
Let's get to, we're
a
at
good
5.
number.
So one thing I want to point out is I'm seeing some of these counties in Pennsylvania. It looks like we have about 3 of them that are pretty much fully reporting their votes. And these 3, Elk County, Forest County, and Wyoming County, they're all pretty rural, small, heavily Republican counties. But it does look like Fetterman is doing substantially better than Biden did in 2020 in these counties. So in Elk County, Fetterman's outperforming by 8 points. Forest County is outperforming by 10. And Wyoming County, he's outperforming by 7. So even though Oz is still carrying these small rural counties, it seems like Fetterman is overperforming. So that'll be something that'll be interesting to watch as we proceed in the night to see if that carries over, especially if we look at some of these larger, more suburban and urban counties.
We have a request here on YouTube to go back to Virginia too. Do we have any advancement?
Let's see here. Virginia 2, no, we're still at about 70% reported, and Kiggin still leads by about 9%.
Okay. Well,
Want to stay in Virginia, or can I have
well,
one more?
let's look at. We have the results up there, but on the screen, but not
Okay,
a lot
great.
has changed. All right. What do you have?
Oh, I just found some Rhode Island polling. If we wanted to have to look at how accurate it was, the 538 average for Rhode Island 2 had Fung up 47-41. Though the latest D-Trip poll did have it tied at 48, which is the most recent poll up here. So it could be, instead of a massive polling error, it could be a significant shift.
Do you also know how many polls are just included in general in the average?
I do.
I would not consider the current result, where it's like 51-47. Is that where does Decision Desk have?
Let's see.
I'm
Let
not
me
seeing
see.
Rhode Island numbers at all.
There were 10 polls, by the way, I believe.
Thank you.
In Rhode Island too?
In Rhode Island too.
There were a lot of polls in Rhode Island in terms of public polling. There was a disproportionate amount of polls in Rhode Island too, compared to a lot of other districts where there was just nothing.
It looks like there were a lot of Boston Globe, Suffolk.
And they also poll, but they polled like all the candidates. Yeah, I mean, okay, I misspoke earlier. There was one poll that was not public that did have Magaziner with the lead.
Unbelievable. Just go ahead and leave.
When?
That poll wasn't public, but your admission of guilt is.
Wait, a private poll?
Yes.
Oh, well, you don't actually have to correct yourself.
There's no need to.
No. Every
need to bring
single
that up.
poll that was public that 538 Tract had Fung up, except for the last one, which had it even.
There are also a ton of Suffolk polls there. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like it's dominated by them.
Yeah.
Suffolk does a good job. They're a strong pollster.
I don't know. I'm not sure if it was. I would want to take a second to look at like where they were measuring Fung, like what the Republican share of the vote was, to see if like that was what was off, or if it was just like so many people who are kind of meh on Magaziner and were maybe saying they were undecided.
I guess
mean.
what's kind of your thinking there? Because I think the polling consistently had Fung in the mid 40s, like 43, 44, 45, 47, 48, and it was Magaziner who started out in the 30s and kind of slowly gained up. You know, folks put their jerseys on. I think for us it was always this question of where was Gilbert, the third party candidate, and we were seeing him.
I was saying, who is Gilbert?
So
Gilbert
Gilbert was the moderate party candidate. The moderate party in Rhode Island is a party that actually does quite well in statewide elections.
Okay.
Can win double digits regularly, and so we were seeing this moderate party candidate win mid-single digit percentages in some of these polls, and that really made us. It opened up the possibility that. The win number for Alan Fung would be less than 50.
Okay.
That he could get across. That he could get across the finish line with only 47 or 48% of the vote.
Okay.
If the third party candidate was taking 6%.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt here because we're getting close to the 10 o'clock hour, which that last hour, I feel like, went by incredibly fast. We're getting close to 10 o'clock. We have a video. It's going to set up the states that are going to be closing. 10 p.m., do you have something final?
Yeah, going back to Virginia, because it was asked about, I think Spanberger is going to win. I think she's in a good spot right now. Most counties have reported, it looks like, but Prince William County is still about half out. Vega has a very tiny lead in the decision desk count, but about 2%. Everywhere has reported almost fully, except for Prince William, which is only about half. And Spanberger is up 28 points in PwC. So I think this race goes her way pretty quickly at this point.
Okay.
Another one off the board for Democrats.
Let's come back to that maybe at the top. But let's do the video introducing 10 o'clock closing time states, and we'll be back in 5 minutes.
So there's like
What I like to call the Mountain States poll closing is coming up here at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and I'm going to take you through which races to watch. Polling stations will close completely in Montana, Nevada, and Utah, as well as in parts of Oregon and Idaho. Of course, the primary focus here is on Nevada, though you will probably have to temper your emotions for a little while, as Nevada does not count results until there are no more voters standing in line across the entire state. Nevertheless, there are quite a few intriguing races for quite a variety of reasons, starting in Nevada with the Silver State's gubernatorial race between Democratic incumbent Governor Steve Sisolak and Republican Clark County Sheriff Joe Lombardo. The race is a dead heat. Lombardo has held a slight lead in Real Clear Politics' and 538's polling averages, and our friends at Inside Elections have rated the contest a toss-up. Lombardo has branded himself a moderate, denouncing Trump's claims of election fraud in Nevada and saying he opposes a national abortion ban, all in an effort to win over disaffected Biden voters. That, combined with his home advantage, has DDHQ forecasting that he is likely to outrun the more conservative Republican nominee for U.S. Senate, Adam Laxalt. Laxalt succeeded incumbent Democratic U.S. Senator Catherine Cortez Masto as the state's Attorney General in 2015, and the question is if he will also succeed her as U.S. Senator by taking her seat tonight. Decision Desk HQ rates the contest a toss-up, as Laxalt maintains a 1 to 2 point advantage in our polling average. Of course, margins in Clark County, housing Las Vegas, will prove key to who wins each race. Lombardo, as the current sheriff of Clark, should expect to outrun Laxalt by about 2% there, while running behind Laxalt in his home base, Washoe County, home to Reno. Let's move on to a couple of U.S. House races. The state of Montana regained a seat following the census and drew up a slightly competitive Trump +7 district covering the western portion of the state. Republican nominee Ryan Zinke previously represented the entire state in Congress, and he is likely to defeat former Olympian and Democratic nominee Monica Traynell. That said, this race should be closely watched for a couple of reasons. First, Zinke was forced to resign as Secretary of the Interior under the Trump administration after he repeatedly violated ethical rules and lied to investigators. And second, considering its partisan lean, Montana is a surprisingly pro-choice state, and the 1st District ranks well above the national average in educational attainment, which are factors likely to drive Democratic turnout following the Supreme Court's abortion ruling. In other words, don't be surprised if Montana's 1st District is one of few bright spots for the Democratic Party in an otherwise poor night. Now let's turn back to Nevada. State Democrats unpacked, so to speak, the state's formerly solid blue 1st District to shore up their incumbents' chances in the 3rd and 4th districts. As a result, incumbent Susie Lee is likely to hold on in Nevada 03, as well as incumbent Stephen Horsford in Nevada 04. Both districts became several points more Democratic under the state's new boundaries, and the contests are favored to go in the Democrats' direction. And that is all for the 10 p.m. poll closing. Back to you guys in the studio.
Thank you for that preview. Welcome back, or welcome if you decided that now is the time you're going to join our live stream. I'm Nathan Gonzalez with Inside Elections. You're going to have to imagine when Ryan Matsumoto comes back, he'll be sitting right here. Jacob Rubashkin, Bradley Washer, Aaron Covey, Leah Askari-Nam. We learned earlier, even though you just saw Nevada, the polls closed, but because of a lack of ballots that are going to be counted tonight in Clark County, those races, the Senate race, governor race, and the 3 House races, we're not expecting those to really have to be decided tonight. But we're looking at, let's go back to Virginia's 7th District, Abigail Spanberger. Jacob, you were talking about it a few minutes ago, but what's the latest there?
Yeah, well, according to the Virginia Public Access Project, the Spanberger has now taken a lead in the votes there, very narrow, but the reality is we're just waiting really on Prince William County. Still another 8,600 early votes left. The rest of the district is much more conservative, aside from Fredericksburg, but the rest of the district is basically all in.
So how does Prince William is up on, the DDHQ Prince William County stuff is up on the screen, so how does that compare with the Virginia Public Access?
So VPAP has about double the votes, give or take, currently counted. A similar split, but slightly more favorable to Spanberger, 66-34 instead of 64-36, and that's the difference here. Once those votes come in for Spanberger, she's not going to relinquish that lead. I think she's in a good spot for the rest of the evening. Vega does not, unless Vega does have some extra juice in Prince William County that no one is counting on. We've talked about Spanberger as one of Democrats' strongest incumbents pretty much from the get-go, and she is showing again that she deserves that label. It also helps to have 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 fundraising advantage.
Yeah, Vega and Republicans were later coming on TV. They came on heavy late, including Congressional Leadership Fund. But that would be it's still a considerable Biden district, but that would be I think that would show that there's certainly a ceiling on Republican gains.
Yeah.
If that happens. Aaron, did you have something else on Virginia 7, or did you?
No, I don't think so. Not on Virginia 7 specifically.
Okay.
I think that's a much better bellwether than something like Rhode Island 2, because you don't have the candidates significantly impacting.
And the Spanberger seat, I think we had that tilt Democratic, was it?
We did.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we had it there for most of almost the entire cycle. I think it's been one of the top races for the entire time. Okay, what else do we know? Georgia, let's go back to the Georgia Senate race, since that's one of the top races. Where do things stand? It looked like Warnock was hovering above 50%. Is that still the case in Georgia?
Yeah, 51.5% to Warnock, to Walker's 46.7%. All of are still at under 2 points. Makes me feel like we're not headed to a runoff either direction.
Any significant outstanding in terms of specific, something that's abnormally either Republican or Democratic that we're missing?
Not that I've seen kind of combing through the Georgia's 159 counties as they report here.
Let's go one by one through those, if we could, please. No,
You know, I think that by and large, we're seeing very similar margins to the 2021 special election, where Warnock won by 2 points. There are a few places
Bradley,
where
I just upgraded because I got tired of looking at
Walker
the
is doing
notification
a
for the
little bit
new
better,
TweetDeck
but
thing. I didn't have those.
mostly kind of as I've been spot checking, the numbers look decent for Warnock. You know,
feel
to
like
give you an
mine's too
example,
zoomed out.
Douglas County, which is
You have to
right outside
try
of
the-
Atlanta, right next to
click on
Fulton
that.
County. You know, we're looking at
Definitely more readable.
you know, about 91% of the expected vote in. Warnock is up by 31 points. If you go back to that special election in 2021, the runoff, Warnock won by 30 points. So when you're dealing with these kind of very small portions of the state, you can give yourself a little wiggle room, but he's doing better than he did that last year. You know, you got to be feeling decently, especially given how much we've seen the polls tighten in that state over the last couple weeks. You know, I talked to a lot of Democrats who were quite fearful that they would lose outright in the last week or so, and that was not a sentiment that I had really heard from a lot of Democratic strategists in the preceding 3, 4, 5 months.
It looks like we've called the race for Wexton
Okay.
in the 10th.
Go. Virginia's 10th District, DDHQ. It's called for Jennifer Wexton.
Yes.
This is our, we had this rated as likely Democratic. We put this onto our list late because there was a Republican poll that showed there was movement there. So this is now the 6th competitive district out of 83 House races. Everything has gone how it's been rated in one. We've only called one of 20 toss-up races, being the Rhode Island's 2nd district. One that's not on our list, but I wanted to point it out, in Florida's 22nd district, Congresswoman Frankel, earlier today when it looked like there might be a complete Democratic collapse in South Florida, this was talked about as a district that might flip to Republicans, and DDHQ called Florida's 22nd district for Frankel.
Has Florida 23 been called yet?
No, not what I'm seeing. Let me refresh here.
Okay.
What's happening in Georgia's 6th district? I see that that's not called, and that's kind of one of those solid
Oh, I thought it was called.
solid flips. I don't see it on our
Let me see.
dashboard here. But since we have so
Huh,
much in
no,
the
you're
Senate
right.
race, is there anything fluky going on?
Is that McBath?
It is the
It's
formerly
Rich McCormick, yeah.
formerly McBath seat that Rich
Oh,
McCormick, the
that's-
Republican, should win. So they
Okay, I got
Bordeaux
confused.
and McBath ran in the other
Got it.
in the 7th district.
Okay.
Well,
Bath will
Nathan,
still be.
to answer one of your earlier little questions, I see Dawson County in Georgia for that race is 101% of estimated vote in.
There you go. Ask and ye shall receive. 1 out of 159 counties out of how many counties in the entire country? Do we have a?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
That's our trivia question.
Something I
Please put
used
it
to
in the
know.
YouTube comments.
There's like 254 in Texas alone.
Oh, jeez.
Texas
There's zero
is
in
okay to have that many counties. Georgia,
Thank you
putting
for
a
giving
ban?
it
Are you putting a
permission.
cap on?
look, Delaware, tiny state, 3 counties. Very easy. They go 1, 2, 3. Iowa, slightly larger state, 99 counties.
That seems unnecessary.
I think it exists purely so that Chuck Grassley can say that he visits all 99 counties every year.
Well, are counties more about geography or population? It's more about geography, right? Typically?
Well, they would have been established for.
Don't tell
If
that
we
to
have
the
to
former
reallocate
president.
the counties,
know.
that's a new opportunity for gerrymandering, Jacob.
That's true. Well, Georgia, that's why Georgia has so many counties. It was designed as a system to dilute the power of black voters.
That's true, yeah.
And yet here we are talking about a African American senator potentially winning a full term. It doesn't have
Or
to do with the
being
number of counties.
defeated by
Or
an
being defeated by an
African-American
African
opponent.
American football legend.
How are things looking in New Hampshire right now?
Probably cold.
Yeah,
Speaking
and it
of
looks
small
like
states
we had been
with too
dealing
many-
with the AP was being kind of funky with Paulding County in Georgia.
Okay.
They were showing it as a 49-point lead for Herschel Walker, which would have been a 25-point overperformance from 2020. But that has been
Corrected.
since corrected. He's leading by 24 points. So again, right in line with that 2020 number.
Let's see, so New Hampshire right now, in the first district, we have Pappas still ahead by about 15 points. He's not going to win by 15 points, but that's with only 38% in. And then Custer's ahead by 17 points with about 29% in. Again, that's probably a larger lead than she'll actually get.
Yeah, I mean, if the Senate race is where it has been, and I don't know that it's changed significantly, it seems like there'd be no reason to believe Pappas or Custer would be particularly vulnerable, right, if Hassan is holding her own?
I think that means Custer certainly is, and Pappas should be, though his seat is again like maybe 2 points further to the right. I'd have to double check, but yeah, they're not too, the districts themselves are not super significantly different politically.
We've got in Pennsylvania, we've got about 92% of the vote reporting in Lackawanna County, which is home of Scranton, best known as the
Heard of it.
So that's PA8.
birthplace of our president Joe Biden, as well as the Dunder Mifflin paper company. And currently we're seeing Josh Shapiro at 61%, John Fetterman at 57%. This is a county that Joe Biden won 54% in. And Matt Cartwright, as Aaron alluded to, in Pennsylvania's 8th district at 59% over his opponent, Jim Bognett. You know, Biden won this county roughly 54-46, lost Pennsylvania 8 by 3 points, give or take. And Cartwright is doing about 5 points better than Biden did on vote share, so 10 points on margin. Pretty decent position for Congressman Matt Cartwright, toss-up race in Pennsylvania's 8th district.
And I think that's what we would have expected anyway, because Cartwright ran significantly ahead of Biden in 2020. Let's see, Biden won his district, or Trump won his district by about 2 points, 3 points actually, in 2020, but Cartwright defeated his Republican opponent by I think like 4 points, and it's a rematch, so he's running against the same opponent again.
Another point on Pennsylvania, it looks like we're getting some more of these counties that are like fully reporting their votes. So yeah, it seems like all of these are some of these small rural counties, so Lycoming, Clarion, Elk, Wyoming, Juniata, and Forest. And they're all heavily Republican counties, so Oz is winning them by a lot. But it seems like in every single one, Fetterman is doing a decent amount better than Biden did in these counties in 2020, from anywhere from like 2 to 10 points on the margin. So based on what we're looking at so far, it definitely seems like Fetterman had a bit more appeal to some of these rural voters. So that'll definitely be something to watch, and it could give him the edge in the end.
So it looks like overall, Fetterman is not performing as well as Shapiro, which was expected, but Fetterman might be performing better than Biden.
Yeah, definitely in these rural counties.
Okay.
But we don't have any fully reported counties yet from more the suburban or urban areas of the state, so there could be a very different dynamic there. I think definitely the hope when Democrats nominated Fetterman was that they thought he could appeal a lot to some of these white working class voters in these rural areas, and it does look like he's done that, at least from what we're seeing so far. But whether or not that translates over to like the Philly suburbs is another question.
I have some evidence that I think President Biden might be watching tonight on our live stream, because Jake Sherman is reporting that President Biden has called to congratulate a couple of incumbents, Lisa Blunt Rochester of Delaware and Abigail Spanberger of Virginia, who we've been saying looks like she's in decent shape. So I'm pretty sure Biden's watching. So thank you,
That's definitely what that
President Biden,
means.
for that.
Oh, and we've got a call.
No, you. It's your turn.
Your turn,
Do
Jacob.
it.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Hold on. Go ahead.
Decision Desk HQ projects Josh Shapiro, elected governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, defeating Republican Doug Mastriano, and kicking off what will probably be 2 to 8 years of presidential speculation for the governor-elect.
We'll have
2 to 8. That seems
8
low.
years.
How old is
He's
he?
running in 2030.
Well, he's got 2 terms to run as governor, and then maybe we'll see what he does.
Oh, I'm saying it should be higher.
It should be higher, yeah.
He's got a lifetime ahead
yeah.
of him.
But I don't know.
I take your
Young.
point.
This is just the beginning.
But as some Democrats are pointing out, I think Josh Shapiro has been waiting for this moment for
Yes.
about 30 years. So
And this is, I think, one of the key moments for hearing a Republican concede. Like, I'm interested in what if Mastriano concedes, and what that looks like in the
which
next
is not
couple hours.
necessary for certification, but you're right.
No.
Absolutely. How does he react? Is it going to be interesting?
And remember, this is a state that at the beginning of this cycle looked like it could be very, very competitive at the gubernatorial level, right? And there was all sorts of worry about, the possibility for shenanigans in the 2024 presidential race if there was a governor who was not on board with operating the election in the way that it has been operated in the past. And Doug Mastriano basically said himself, I can disqualify any ballot machines I want as governor. I have a lot of power over the election process. So it's important for Democrats that they held this seat, even if by the end of the day we all kind of anticipated that this was going to be the outcome. I think the important question is now, does Shapiro get to 54, 40, or 55? And if he does, then for John Fetterman, that's a good sign.
And I do think we should look at the. Weren't there some relatively tight polls at the very end of this, or am I getting that mixed up?
For
Maybe
which
not.
race?
For the Pennsylvania governors, or was that just always up? It was always up.
Oh, yeah, I think
No,
Shapiro.
it was always
Shapiro
up.
was always up.
Oh,
Yeah.
there is well, did you have a race call that you saw? I don't want to steal. I see in New Hampshire's 2nd district, a DDHQ has a race call for Congresswoman Custer in New Hampshire 2. So that is, I'm looking at here, that is another race that we had on our competitive list. We had it as likely Democratic, so it's not incredibly groundbreaking, but it's going as expected. So to recap, we now have, with New Hampshire 2, there have been 7 out of 83 competitive House races have been called. 4 in favor of Republicans that were rated toward them, 2 in favor of Democrats that were rated that way, and then 1 toss-up that Democrats won out of 20. So we're at 7 out of 83. We're creeping up there. But New Hampshire 2 for Custer. Is there any updates in Oklahoma with the Oklahoma governor's race and Kevin Stitt?
Looks like the same as it was.
Same as before.
I mean, just like looking at the governor's races that have been called, it's kind of, I mean, it's not surprising. It's just,
The blowouts.
Yeah, I mean, you have DeSantis, Kay Ivey was called in Alabama, then you have Kemp and DeWine. It is like a bit of a spectrum of Republican conservative ideologies. Sununu where there haven't been differing stances towards Trump, except for Phil Scott in Vermont. But there have been differing levels of embracing Trump. Even like Kay Ivey, who's always embraced Trump, she was at one point not really on his good side, reportedly. So, it's just interesting to see like Kemp, DeWine, who had other plans whenever Trump was in town, that they still managed to win. So, and then at the same time, and DeSantis as well, who Trump just called disanctimonious, I think, most recently.
It's catchy, it rolls off the tongue.
So I guess I'm saying that these governors who have not totally embraced Trump are still winning. And I don't know what that means because a lot of these were already incumbents. But it's worth noting.
Apparently it's hailing in the Bay Area.
Oh, we have a decision desk call for Colorado.
Oh, go ahead, I didn't see it.
Oh.
Call it out.
Yeah, it looks like Michael Bennett has won re-election. Shouldn't have been a tough state, but I think with the Republican candidate, there was hope among Republicans that in a big enough wave, this is the kind of state that they would win. And it's not. Michael Bennett won.
I obviously want to be careful because we still have a large percentage of the competitive races, but have we seen a race yet? And maybe I'll answer my own question. I don't think we've seen a race yet that shows the bottom totally fell out for Democrats, like where it's like, oh my goodness.
No, if anything, we've seen evidence that it didn't, just based on the New Hampshire 2, Rhode Island 2 calls.
Yeah.
Well, also keep it in mind, we just have so few.
7 out of 83. But Michael Bennett, I mean, that was a
That's
reach.
a big one.
That's
Yeah.
a reach.
And
What's
if,
gonna be-
if Bennett puts up a big, right, if Bennett is winning by 10 or more, all of a sudden I think Colorado 8 comes back to play in a major way.
I was
You know,
looking at that,
there,
yeah.
there could
What
be
is that? Because
some-
we moved that from toss-up to tilting Republican, because that's what the data.
Yeah, I mean, I
So-
think that's to be expected, and I think even the numbers we were seeing that had Kirkmeyer, the Republican in Colorado, 8 ahead, were showing Bennett with a lead in that district. Right, that district's about 10 points more Republican than the state overall. So depending on how big Bennett's victory is ultimately. That could be one where, to the extent that there are coattails to relatively unknown candidates in a new district, it could be helpful. Do we have a polis call?
It does look like right now, Adams and Weld County are the two big counties in Colorado 8. Adams leans Democratic, Weld leans Republican. They're both reporting around like the mid-50s% estimated turnout. And currently, Caraveo is leading by about 3 points. So.
Oh, and Boebert, where's Boebert?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
confused. I kind of expected Polis. Oh no,
Polis is running ahead of Bennett.
Polis
What
is
I see.
on.
But it hasn't been called yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was expected.
Yeah.
Polis was.
But-
I'm not seeing any polis data. Maybe I'm just,
But it's also on the called races.
or
Polis isn't, is it?
I'm not,
Maybe not.
I don't see Polis on the called.
I'm not seeing polis on called.
Maybe it was. I don't know.
Maybe your screen's more special than mine.
Maybe.
I'm going to refresh.
Abigail Spanberger is declaring victory.
Well, then, if she's doing it.
And if she's declared, no, it was my page was messed up. Yeah, I'm confused.
And Frank Mervan,
Do we have data there?
Decision Desk is reporting a little bit of data in Mervan.
Indiana's first district.
AP is reporting quite a bit more, 82% in Mervan, leading 52-48, which is closer than I would have expected, but we'll have to wait and see.
It does look like we have a another, I mean, I don't think this was a competitive Colorado 7.
No, but that is a new member.
But
It
yeah,
is.
Colorado 7, it's
was
on our
kind
list,
of.
so
It was
wait,
likely be.
make the call.
Okay, looks like.
Make the call.
Okay, everybody. Decision
Do it,
Desk
do it.
HQ projects Brittany Peterson.
Patterson.
Oh, you know what? I actually should know that. Though it should be 2 T's, I think. Wins Colorado's 7th district. So we are getting some calls from Colorado.
So Colorado's 7th district, we had it rated as likely Democrat
Oh,
winning.
you had it. Okay.
Yeah.
Brittany Patterson, Earl,
Oh, that's the Perlmutter
Ed
seat.
Perlmutter finally decided not to run for re-election after kind of going back and forth a few times. So that is the eighth competitive race out of 83 that's been called. Everything's been going sort of as planned. And again, and as planned would still be Republicans winning, but maybe the ceiling, they're not reaching the top end of our 13 to 30 projection if they're not winning
So
some of those types of races.
the reason
Oh,
why.
and we have a DDHQ
Oh,
call
go
in
for it.
Virginia too.
Yeah, go
Oh.
do it.
Decision Desk HQ projects that Jennifer Kiggins will defeat Congresswoman Elaine Luria in Virginia's 2nd district. That's Virginia Beach, very high military population, and the most competitive seat in Virginia. So if you were following along with the very popular heuristic of the 3 Virginia congresswomen and their various stages of vulnerability, we've got Jennifer Wexton winning her race, Abigail Spanberger most likely winning her race. I don't know if we have a DDHQ call yet, but
Not quite yet.
several other outlets have called it, and she has declared victory, and then a Kiggins victory in Virginia too. So Republicans flipping the lowest hanging fruit in the state, but probably falling short in the other 2 districts.
So significant in that this is a Democratic incumbent losing, but we already had it rated as tilting Republican
yeah.
coming in as you
So
were.
Republicans won the tilt Republican district, Democrats won tilt Democrat, and likely Democratic. So it looks
Yeah.
like roughly in line with expectations.
Correct. And we're at 9 out of 83.
At least all of those kind of mesh together well. Like they tell a similar story.
How so?
Just the fact that New Hampshire is going for Democrats as we expect in the Senate, and then in Colorado the same. But then if you look at these House races that are more competitive in the 10th district in Virginia, then if they can't get that, it just seems to all mesh well in my head.
Oh, looks like we have another call from Decision Desk projecting Texas governor's race. Greg Abbott reelected. Not necessarily surprising, not surprising, but you know, it was kind of him and Stacey Abrams who are going to be the 2 comeback kids. Looks like that's Texas again eludes Democrats. That is the headline here. But maybe next year, you know, maybe 2024.
There was this stat in this WAPO article I read that said that Beto had spent 1,175 of the last 2,048 days of his life running for office.
I mean, he might be building infrastructure for 2024 or 2026 or 2028. We
That's
just
true.
don't know. But it just seems like every 2 years we're like, is this it? No, this isn't the year that Texas turns blue. So I'm really interested to see what the final margin is, though, because I would like to see if there's a trend, you know,
Right.
how much further Dems have to go to get that Texas majority, which it's got to happen someday. I just don't know.
I don't know. Now they're going to probably have to flip the script on Hispanic voters.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
that was what was going to bring Texas into the blue
that's true.
column,
Well,
and that is
Let's. That is true, but also, what's Greg Abbott's margin right now?
I don't know. That was what I was wondering.
I'm seeing him up 54 to 45.
The Decision Desk HQ numbers have it at a 1-point lead.
I was looking at another place.
Another place. I would be right. So,
Who's got a secret trove of numbers?
he won.
Another
He won.
place.
That's got to be the. I think that this is likely to be the closest. The closest Texas governor's race since Ann Richards 1994.
Probably.
Maybe the weird 2006 four-way Kinky Friedman, Mama Strayhorn, Chris Bell, Rick Perry race was closer by margin, but I think that the conversation about Latino voters in South Texas moving away from Democrats is very important and matters a lot to Democrats' ability to win statewide, but it has in some ways overshadowed the massive shifts in the Texas suburbs that have moved the other direction for Democrats. You know, and so we're still seeing closer and closer statewide races, even as you see a drop off in South Texas. You probably need both if you're Democrats to win statewide anytime soon, but it's not like the state is getting worse for them. It's still getting better, but just slower than they had anticipated.
Well, and on like the congressional level, the fact that like redistricting made it a lot structurally harder for Democrats to pick up any other seats in those suburban areas that have been trending more in their favor, I think is part of that conversation as well. Like if we had had a bunch of competitive House races in like the Dallas and Houston and Austin suburbs like we did last cycle, I think the narrative would have been a little different. But I think you're right.
Well, and it's like compared to like North Carolina, which recently feels like Democrats have been closer and closer. It's just North Carolina did something different, right? Like they had like completely shifting coalitions that made them successful in 2008 and then unsuccessful ever since, except for some governor's races. Whereas Texas, I kind of think of more of a linear trend. But I'd be really surprised, like I'd be really interested to compare the Texas margin to the North Carolina margins. Obviously Senate versus governor, so, you know, but it could be a fun exercise.
Yeah.
I'm feeling left out of the race calling, so I'm going to make a call here in Georgia's 14th district. Well, I'm not making a call. Decision Desk HQ is making a call for Marjorie Taylor Greene. Maybe you've heard of her before. But Marcus Flowers, the Democrat running against her, I think sent about 7.2 emails per day about how he was going to defeat her. And it looks like he's going to lose by 30 points. So for any of you who donated to Marcus Flowers and believe those emails, this did not turn out how you were led to believe. Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Is that, we got a big call coming up.
Okay.
I don't know if it's live or not.
I know, I'm like afraid to say it.
Well, if it's on the board.
It's not on the board, it's in our emails.
Oh.
I'm just gonna
My
say
email has not refreshed yet.
I'm asking to follow up.
I think we can.
Oh, this is how we build suspense on a live stream when we're not with the big networks.
You guys ready for a big
You guys, what's really exciting is building suspense while we fact check.
Spam the chat if you want to see your election results.
Let's fact check this.
I think we. Yeah.
Go for it. Let's ask for forgiveness.
Okay, go
it
for
has
it.
now been tweeted.
Go for it, Aaron.
It looks like Decision Desk is projecting that Hassan will win re-election.
New Hampshire Senate race.
Which means another day where we will not know the Senate majority. We're not going to know about it.
Yeah, I think looking at how Democrats are doing now in the Senate and comparing to maybe what we would have expected at the beginning of the night or yesterday in pre-election polls and analysis, I think Democrats have to be pretty pleased because New Hampshire Senate already called very early. Looks like Hassan's outperforming the polls. And then Pennsylvania, I think, looks pretty good for Fetterman right now. I was looking at, it looks like there's about 12 counties in Pennsylvania that are fully reporting all of their votes, both election day and absentee. And in every single one of those 12 counties, Fetterman is outperforming Biden's numbers. Some by pretty big amounts, like anywhere from like 2 to 10 points. So a lot of these are like really heavily rural, white working class counties, and Oz is still winning them. But Fetterman is doing much better. So instead of losing by like 40, instead of losing by 50, maybe he's losing by like 40. So that definitely looks really good for Fetterman. Still a lot of areas of the state, especially in the suburbs, where I'm curious to see if that trend carries over. But Pennsylvania looks pretty decent, I think, for Fetterman at the moment. Georgia looks close, still a lot to go there. And then, of course, Nevada and Arizona will have more updates later on.
And Heidi Ganahl, who's the Republican candidate for governor in Colorado, has conceded to Governor Jared Polis. I don't know if we have a race call there yet, but
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that we don't, just considering I thought the Polis race would be, maybe I just misunderstood that. I thought the Polis race I thought Polis would overperform Bennett. But
I think he still should. Yeah, that's what we were all expecting.
so maybe it's just something technical.
To go off your point, Ryan, I feel like Democrats have been doing well in every state except for Florida. Just
Right.
based on the speed at which both of the statewide races were called, I'm looking at Miami-Dade and it looks like Rubio's winning it by 10 still. Like, they're just, the performance that they saw in 2020 Republicans is similar to what we're seeing right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks like North Carolina definitely looks pretty good for Republicans as well, along with Ohio. But yeah, I think like overall, it doesn't seem like Republicans are like massively outperforming the polls like some people thought they would be. So that's definitely a good sign for Democrats.
So coming into this, well, first on New Hampshire, we had it rated as tilt Democratic, and it's going just called as Democratic. Coming in, one of the key narratives was whichever party wins 2 out of 3 out of Georgia, Pennsylvania, Nevada. We don't have any calls in any of those. Nevada, we probably won't, but Warnock looking decent in Georgia. You just talked about Fetterman in Pennsylvania, so you know, it is not out of the realm of possibility that Democrats maintain control of the Senate, although we still have
Yeah, I think
three of the biggest
control,
races.
It definitely looks like a toss-up right now. Maybe even tilt Democratic if you think that the Fetterman numbers look really good for him. But yeah, it doesn't look like that Republican blowout in like 54 seats. Like,
I mean, now the top end would be 53.
with New Hampshire off the board.
I think 50. Well, no, I guess they could get to 54. But Washington, that would include Washington, Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia.
I mean, I would be shocked if Washington goes Republican when it's already been called New Hampshire and Colorado.
Yeah,
I mean, the Colorado one's interesting in that like that sort of reminded me a bit about like Virginia Senate 2014 of like the type of race where maybe if it becomes like a massive Republican wave, then that would be something that would go on well into the night. But the fact that it's been called so early, I think, is a positive sign for Democrats that they're still in the game.
And I'm seeing on Twitter, former Congressman Max Rose is conceding his race in New York's 11th district to Nicole Malliotakis, who defeated him in 2020. This was a rematch. Rose jumped in the race when it looked like the district was going to be redrawn to be much more favorable to Democrats. Ultimately, that map was tossed out by the courts in New York, and Rose stayed in the race but was a pretty clear underdog from then on out, and will not be returning to Congress next year.
So he's conceded in New York. We don't have an official call.
That's correct.
Yet. He's conceding that is certainly a key indicator. Actually, I'm not even seeing my dashboard. I'm not even seeing Luria. We called Luria, but I'm not seeing it
Yeah,
pop up.
I
on
don't either.
No, that was a mistake.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was.
Oh.
I missed on my columns, and CNN had called it, and so.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, okay, so it's
So
not
somebody
Yeah.
called it.
Yeah.
It'll get out there.
All right. We'll ask for forgiveness later off the live stream.
I guess CNN's the corollary news network. They operate in a different stream than we do.
All right. Well, maybe we should reiterate if you didn't catch. So, Virginia's 2nd district,
Yeah.
DDHQ, has not officially called Virginia's 2nd district. But we did talk about that earlier. But we want to clarify that.
Yeah. And diving into Kentucky real quick, again, there's this abortion referendum ballot measure on the ballot. The no on the ballot measure is the pro-abortion stance, and it currently has 54% no, That's about 15 or 14% better than Charles Booker, the Democratic candidate, is doing. He's down at about 40%. Again, Amy McGrath in 2020 got 38% of the vote. So I wouldn't be surprised if Booker lands in kind of that 36 to 40 range. If he is there and the ballot measure continues to float about 14 points better than him, Kentucky voters might have well just enshrined or stymied an effort to remove the right to an abortion from the state constitution. Which speaks to the unique politics of abortion rights in the country, that we've now potentially seen two of the more Republican states when they've actually gone to the polls, as opposed to Michigan, which is also facing a very close ballot measure, which is leading by just about the same as Kentucky, actually, about 53-47%, the pro-abortion measure in Michigan. So interesting results all around.
One race, it was a solid Democratic seat, but it's a U.S. Senate race that DDHQ has called the U.S. Senate race in Illinois for Senator Tammy Duckworth. That was done a while ago. I don't think we announced it, though. Not a surprise, but she did get buzz as I think she was even vetted as a VP, potential VP running mate for Joe Biden, and probably will continue to be in a national conversation if those conversations come up again. But Duckworth winning re-election in Illinois.
So we have some more results coming in from some of these Pennsylvania counties, and what I'm seeing is that there's 17 counties that have reported greater than 95% of the expected vote. And Fetterman is outperforming Biden's 2020 numbers in every single one of them. Now, most of these are some of these heavily rural, white working class counties, so definitely Fetterman has demonstrated his appeal to those voters. But one that I found interesting that just popped up was Center County, and that one is a higher percent college educated, a bit more, I guess, like suburban/urban. And in that one, Fetterman's also outperforming Biden's numbers by 2 points. So that's a good sign for him that this extra appeal beyond the Democratic baseline is not just in these rural counties. He's doing better in some of these other places as well. So the signs so far look really good for Fetterman, I think. But again, I think Oz could have a path depending on how the Philadelphia suburbs go. I think we saw in the primary that Oz, he did pretty well in all these counties that are along the border with New Jersey. So maybe he'll outperform there. But I think that would be his path to try and overcome Fetterman's advantages in these other counties.
I saw Nick Cohen just tweet, Ryan. He looked at the same thing you did, and he says that he thinks it's favored to Democrats slightly right now.
I mean, gosh, I feel since we're diving into so many of these individual races, we can't forget this is a midterm election with President Biden at between 42 to 43% job approval rating, and Democrats are holding their own. Republicans are still likely to win the House. The Senate, though, is up for grabs. But under these conditions, if you're a Democrat, you have to be at least breathing a half of a sigh of relief that it could have been much worse.
Yeah, I mean, given Biden's approval rating, I mean, the idea, even like the numbers, like the kind of high end of your projections, I think are still, it could be worse. And part of that is just redistricting and things aren't as competitive anymore. But
there are 83 races on our list.
I know.
How many more do you want?
That's
How many
true.
more do the people want?
No, that's a good point.
But to explain our range, so our House range 13 to 30. If Republicans win everything where they're favored to win, Democrats win everything, and the toss-up split evenly, that would be 13. But we, coming in, weren't expecting them to break evenly, and so that's why there was the top end, getting the top end closer to 30. But that's just to explain our range a little bit.
I think for Democrats, you really
you want to see Warnock come off the board tonight, or hope for an upset in Wisconsin, because Nevada is just such a wild card. Even if you pick up Pennsylvania, you want to know that you're all right in one other state to offset Nevada, or Georgia. So, I think this isn't the calamity that I think some Republicans were expecting for Democrats. Certainly if you go back a year when you had House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy predicting a 60 seat swing.
Well, and Glenn Youngkin winning and Biden winning Virginia. That was a huge victory, and showed that the map should have been big, but I think so far the map hasn't proven to be as big as what Youngkin's victory would have shown in
Well,
2021.
we gotta take into account Trump was not a part of it wasn't part of the calculus. He was able to run without his criticism. Trump never said anything bad about him, but he also wasn't on the campaign trail. Right now we have the night before the midterms, speculation that what's Trump going to say at this Ohio rally? Is he going to run? And we've heard if you have a pro-Trump kind of base come out, it's also risking the anti-Trump. I think there might have been a miscalculation there about how much sorry, I was looking at, we have a race call, so I'm going to stop because this one's more interesting. Decision Desk projects Marcy Kaptur wins re-election.
Ohio's 9th district.
Ohio's 9th district.
Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur winning re-election. We had this rated as lean Democratic. It was a district that was drawn by Republicans to defeat her in Ohio's 9th district. But Kaptur was running a strong race even before J.R. Majewski kind of imploded with I think credible accusations that he inflated his military resume and had some other issues Republicans pulled out. But this is one that could have been a wave watch. Kaptur won, and that takes one of the three key Ohio races off the board. That's now, well, I guess we're back to 9. Back to 9. Assuming we're taking the Virginia 2nd hasn't been called. 9 out of 83 competitive House races have been called. Everything has been falling as rated, which still puts Republicans in control, but not this is a Republican reach district that is not that is staying in Democratic hands.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask about, can you tell me about her race? Who was she? And this might be a question for Aaron and Jacob and Bradley, but what are how much of this has to do with candidate quality with the Marcy Kaptur race?
A lot of it.
Jacob, while you talk about that, Aaron, can you look at Colorado 3, please?
Yes.
Jacob.
So look, this was a pretty good example of a candidate quality matchup that seems to have had an impact. Marcy Kaptur, the longest serving woman in the Democratic House Caucus at the moment. I think maybe the second longest. One of the longest serving Democratic members. Had previously represented a much more Democratic-leaning district, but still showed some level of crossover appeal with the kind of working-class white voters in Northwest Ohio that had moved away from Democrats over the last couple of years. J.R. Majewski, an engineer who ultimately misstated might be charitable, misled folks on his military service, said that he did a lot of things that there's no real record that he did, was cut off by the Republican Party. I had one Republican strategist say that he was the worst candidate of this entire cycle for Republicans. And so you had a candidate quality differential. You also had the fact that even though this district voted for Trump by 3 points, it has voted for Democrats, or would have voted for Democrats in other statewide races. It had some of that ancestral Democratic quality. So we'll see what the final margin is, but I think it's a mix of both.
Also, Ohio won we have a decent amount of results in right now. Let me pull it up again. 80% estimated in, and currently Greg Landsman, the Democrat, is leading Congressman Shabbat by about 3 points, which I think most Republicans agree that Shabbat was one of the most vulnerable incumbents this cycle. Obviously, Democrats were mostly on defense, but Republicans were defending a couple of really competitive House seats as well, and Shabbat was up there, if not being probably at least in the top 3.
Yeah, I mean, along with David Valadao, Mike Garcia, both in California.
Don Bacon to a certain
Don
extent
Bacon.
as well.
Let's talk about Colorado's 3rd district with Lauren Boebert, which I think is closer. There was some buzz about whether this was competitive or not, and it looks like it's close, but what do we know about Colorado 3 right now?
So Colorado 3, currently seeing that with 68% of the votes in, the Democrat Adam Frisch is actually leading 52%. Boebert has 48% at the moment. And let's see, it looks like there's still a good chunk of votes out of Mesa County, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, that are left to be counted. So
And
don't want to draw any.
What is that county? Tell us, how is that county done in the past?
Hold up.
It's a Boebert plus 10.
We have a race call.
Yep, go ahead.
Kansas 3rd District.
Ooh.
Oh, no, sorry, that's not called yet. My mistake. I've done this again. I keep on seeing.
That one
was an interesting one.
Oh, my God. Just don't listen to me anymore.
You need more Mountain Dew.
I need more Mountain Dew. Somebody.
Get him a nice coffee.
I'm slacking over here.
We're not sponsored.
I was gonna say I'd love to know that.
Well, I give you a sneak peek here. I'm not sure someone is projecting her to win. I'm not
We're
sure.
using pronouns.
Who is-
Who are we talking about?
Her.
David's, right?
Kansas 30.
Someone is MSNBC, so NBC has projected Sharice Davids to defeat Amanda Adkins. The AP, with more than 95% of the vote in, has her up by 13, which
Where-
is
And how much, where are we in the DDHQ?
Oh. DDHQ is at 98, and then also by 13.
by 13. So
The interesting thing there for me was that's very similar to the New York Times margin in the poll they had a couple weeks ago. I think that was plus 14 for her in that one.
Yeah.
and if she's winning by right, we figured Laura Kelly probably needs to be winning that district by upwards of 15, 16 points in order to win statewide. So points to a tight governor's race, but certainly one that Laura Kelly is very much in the thick of.
And in that governor's race, it's an 85%